Chapter 211. Kill. Xiaochen stomped heavily on the ground, causing the ground to tremble. He crossed his arms in front of him. Instantly, a tiger and a dragon intersected, merging with Xiaochen's body. A faint golden glow appeared on his body. A tiger and a dragon moved around the surface of his body. Xiaochen withdrew his aura, waiting to unleash it. A horrifying force was accumulating. Xiaochen felt all the muscles in his body swell up. There was a strong force that seemed like it would gush out at any moment. However, this horrifying force was not unleashed in the end. It slowly disappeared. Xiaochen knew why he had not successfully executed the dragon hissing tiger roar in this wondrous state. It was because this great dragon tiger fist used the dragon and tiger body sculpting art as its foundation. If he had not cultivated the dragon and tiger body sculpting art to the 4th layer, the dragon roar piercing the heavens, he would not be able to materialize the true might of the Azure Dragon. In order to balance the might of the Azure Dragon, the ferocious tiger could only lower its own aura. Thus, the crouching tiger hidden dragon would not be able to reach great perfection. Shua. After Xiaochen executed the crouching tiger hidden dragon, that wondrous state immediately disappeared. He thought to himself, what a pity. If I had cultivated the dragon and tiger body sculpting art to the 4th layer, I would not have been able to do so. If I had cultivated the dragon and tiger body sculpting art to the 4th layer, I might have been able to completely comprehend the great dragon tiger fist in one go. Although the state disappeared, the comprehension ability that the flowing light flower gave him did not decrease. It would accompany Xiaochen for the rest of his life, giving him boundless benefits. Xiaochen plucked another flowing light flower petal, and released Bai from the spirit blood jade. At this moment, Bai had already sobered up. It looked angrily at Xiaochen, blaming Xiaochen for locking it up. Xiaochen took out a golden petal, and wanted to give it to Bai to eat. Who knew that the little fellow would ignore him no matter what he said, as though it was really angry. Don't be angry, little fellow. Here's something good to eat. After you eat it, I will not lock you up again. Xiaochen was like a wolf grandmother tempting it with a smile. Bai lay on the ground and pretended not to hear what Xiaochen said. Xiaochen smiled helplessly. This fellow really couldn't do anything about it. For the sake of this flowing light marigold flower, the scarlet-crowned snake had waited bitterly for God knows how many years. On the other hand, the flowing light flower had a much stronger effect on spirit beasts than on humans. Under certain circumstances, it could even allow spirit beasts to transform in advance. Therefore, the flowing light flower must be given to Bai. Otherwise, it would be too wasteful. Xiaochen walked over and called out a few more times. The little guy just lay on the ground and pretended to be dead, ignoring him. When Xiaochen saw the situation, he could only use his trump card. He took out a bottle of Liushang Pavilion's wine from his universe ring. Squatting on the ground, Zhang Xian opened the bottle cap and shook it a few times. A rich aroma of wine immediately drifted out. Boom! A white figure flashed before Xiaochen's eyes. It was like a white specter. Strangely, it could not move at all. It pounced towards the wine bottle in Xiaochen's hand. Fortunately, Xiaochen was prepared. With a schwa sound, he switched the wine bottle to his other hand. Otherwise, it might really be snatched away by Bai's sudden leap. You have really become a little drunkard. Eat this flower petal first, then I will give you the wine. Otherwise there is no way, Xiaochen said as he patted Bai's head. Bai looked at Xiaochen with a wronged expression. Its cute eyes were misty, it looked very pitiful. It stood up straight and used its white claws to hook onto the wine bottle in Xiaochen's hand. When Xiaochen saw how pitiful it was, his heart softened. He said, I'm afraid of you. You are really a little ancestor. I can't hit you or scold you. I even have to provide you with good food and drinks. Bai gulped down a big mouthful of wine. Its little face revealed a blush. Then it suddenly snatched away the flowing light flower petal in Xiaochen's hand. It made a face at Xiaochen and slipped away. Xiaochen revealed a smile. He used his spiritual sense to chase after it. When he discovered that it had not gone far, he relaxed. After leaving Mo City, Bai had been following him everywhere. There were a few times when they met with danger, and Bai had saved him more than once. Xiaochen had long forgotten his purpose in capturing Bai. Now in his eyes, Bai was no longer a pet but his best companion. Although Bai cultivated the mysterious 9 heavenly revolution transformation and grew very quickly, its current combat prowess was no weaker than a regular martial saint's. However, Xiaochen had never thought of asking it to help him in battle. There were a few times when Bai wanted to run out and help him. However, he blocked it in the mixed blood cloud, not letting it out. It was fine as long as it could live happily. If it got injured in battle or got into an accident, it would be too late for regrets. Early the next morning, the first ray of sunlight from the east shone through the window and onto Xiaochen's face. Xiaochen opened his eyes and let out a drawn-out breath. He slowly got up and stretched his body. After a night of cultivation, he was filled with vigor. He was full of energy, qi, and spirit. He was filled with energy. After washing up, Xiaochen rushed to the dueling grounds of Qingyan Peak. Lu Ruyue had already agreed to teach him listening to the sword and communicating with it. Xiaochen finally had a clear idea of his purpose in coming to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. He could not help but be filled with anticipation. He quickened his pace. Pooh! Just as Xiaochen walked out of the courtyard, a white figure leaped out. Its glossy body reflected a faint glow. It nimbly jumped onto Xiaochen's shoulder. To Xiaochen, Xiaobai's petite body was almost negligible. It did not put any pressure on him at all when it sat on his shoulder. Xiaochen did not know what difference the flowing light flower made to Bai. He was curious. He could not help but gently pull Bai from his shoulder into his embrace and observe it carefully. Bai's eyes flickered with an intelligent glow. When Xiaochen looked into its eyes, he felt that it was more intelligent than usual. He could see a trace of shyness in the depths of its eyes. Shyness? I must have seen wrongly. It does not make sense for such a human-like gaze to appear in Bai's eyes. Xiaochen composed himself and looked again. That shyness had already disappeared. Xiaochen smiled faintly. He had indeed seen wrongly. Xiaochen placed Bai back on his shoulder. 10 minutes later, he arrived at Qingyan Peak's dueling plaza. It was unknown when Lu Ruyue had arrived. She was currently guiding Lu Suifeng in martial techniques. The expression on her face was very stern, and there was some disappointment in her eyes. You failed the exam last year. Your bone age is already 19. If you fail again, you will never be able to become a core disciple. Don't go to Jade Maiden Peak for now. I have already helped you apply for leave. Lu Ruyue said with a sullen expression. Lu Suifeng said with a bitter expression, that can't be. Sis, I have an appointment with Miss Xinyun in the afternoon. We are going to do a mission together. Dong. Lu Ruyue smacked Lu Suifeng's forehead violently. You are useless. She is already a core disciple of Jade Maiden Peak. She might even be a true inheritor. Look at you. You are still acting like trash. In this Tianwu continent, if you do not have strong strength, how can you protect the people you love? You are not even as strong as a girl, and you still have the cheek to chase after her. I feel ashamed for you. Lu Suifeng rubbed his head and said, Sis, you can't say that. Then wouldn't a strong and ferocious woman like you have to spend the rest of your life alone? You are asking for a beating. Lu Suifeng nimbly dodged to the side and continued. Haha sis, I am not wrong. Look at the great Qin nation. Which man can defeat you? It would be difficult to find one. You still dare to talk back. You will stay in Qingyan Peak until the end of the month. Lu Ruyue glared at Lu Suifeng and said fiercely. When she heard Xiaochen's footsteps, Lu Ruyue could not be bothered with Lu Suifeng. When Lu Ruyue saw Bai on Xiaochen's shoulder, her eyes lit up. She quickly walked over and felt it was strange. She said, This little fellow, why does it seem like he has more spiritual energy than yesterday? Xiao Bai seemed to understand Lu Ruyue's words. A happy expression appeared on her face as she blinked at Lu Ruyue a few times. After a while, he cheered and jumped down energetically. He grabbed onto Xiaochen's leg and shook it continuously. Xiaochen knew what it meant. He took out a bottle of wine from the universe ring. Bai held the wine and immediately ran to the side happily. Lu Ruyue revealed a rare warm smile on her face. She said, This little fellow will be fine after drinking too much, right? Xiaochen joked, Let him be, he is fine after drinking a little. As long as he doesn't go crazy, he will be fine. Lu Ruyue withdrew her smile. She did not forget what she was here for today. She said, Come with me. Knowing what Lu Ruyue was going to teach him, Xiaochen felt excited in his heart. He quickly followed. Lu Ruyue brought Xiaochen to a weapon rack and stopped. There were all sorts of sabers on the weapon rack. Lu Ruyue drew the small saber in her hand with a huang-dang sound. The entire weapon rack could not help but shake. All the sabers on the weapon rack flew into the air with a ka-cie sound. Dang! Dang! Lu Ruyue shouted softly, and all the sabers stabbed into the ground 2 meters deep. They were incomparably neat and densely packed around the two of them. There were at least 500 weapons around them. Xiaochen was startled. This gentle and quiet communicating with spirit was truly impressive. When fighting with others, if one could control their opponent's weapon, they would already have won half the battle. Before the battle even started, they would already be halfway to victory. After losing their weapons, unless they were people who practice close combat, their combat prowess would be greatly reduced. Lu Ruyue stood across from Xiaochen. She had a calm expression on her face as she sheathed her saber. She said indifferently, "Listening to the sword and communicating with spirit is split into 4 realms. From the lowest to the highest, they are listening to the sword, controlling the sword, sword heart, and communicating with the spirit. Up until now, I have only reached the stage of controlling the sword. The technique I just executed is what I can achieve after I reach great perfection in controlling the sword." Xiaochen listened carefully. When he saw Lu Ruyue stop, he asked, "Actually, I have a question. Why is listening to the sword and communicating with spirit called listening to the sword, and not listening to the saber and communicating with spirit? Why is it known for the sword?" Lu Ruyue explained. "The saber did not exist in the beginning. A long time ago, there was only one type of weapon in the continent, the sword. There were all sorts of swords. The saber was derived from the shape of the sword. Listening to the sword and communicating with spirit was originally a state of the sword. This state could be applied to the saber. After people got used to it, they were too lazy to change it." Chapter 212. So there was such a principle. This was an eye-opener for Xiaochen. However, did this prove that the sword was the most orthodox of all weapons? Lu Ruyue continued, "There are many states in the sword that cannot be applied to the saber. Of course, there are many unique states in saber techniques. However, these are too far away for us. There is no need to consider them for now." There were other states in the saber. This was the first time Xiaochen heard of this. However, what Lu Ruyue said was right. He did not even have a clue about listening to the sword and communicating with it. Thinking about his own state was indeed too far away. Xiaochen nodded and said, "I understand the principle behind this. Elder sister Ruyue, let's begin. How do I enter the first state?" Lu Ruyue smiled somewhat helplessly. She looked very charming as she said, "Actually, I do not know how to enter it either. Back then, when I was practicing with the saber, I entered that state. Such experience will not be of much help to you. That is why when you suggested teaching you listening to the sword and communicating with it, I had no way of teaching you. These days, I have been thinking about how to teach you, how to let you learn listening to the sword and communicating with it." Xiaochen felt depressed in his heart. After spending so much effort, could it be that in the end, she would just say that she comprehended it on her own? That would be as good as not having it at all. Fortunately, Lu Ruyue's next words dispelled his suspicions. This allowed him to not feel too depressed. Since ancient times, states have always been comprehended by oneself. There has never been a precedent of someone trying to achieve it with the help of others. I have thought of some methods, but I am not very confident. You have to be mentally prepared. Xiaochen smiled faintly. It does not matter. Having little confidence is better than having no confidence at all. It is better to do it. If it is not possible, I will not force it. Lu Ruyue heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. In that case, I can rest assured. The girl in the lunar shadow saber should be very important to you. Otherwise, you would not be willing to delay your cultivation to wake her up. Ao Jiao's appearance appeared in Xiaochen's mind. He remembered the promise he made to the Thunder King. Xiaochen said very seriously, "It is very important, very important. Elder sister Ruyue, you woke her up previously. Can this method still be used?" The last time they fought against Song Ke, Lu Riyue had successfully awakened Ao Jiao. If she really had a way to completely make Ao Jiao fantasize, then Xiaochen would not have to worry about it. Lu Riyue smiled and said, "That won't do. After all, that is not my saber. Furthermore, I only managed to achieve this effect after I forcefully used spirit communication. If you want to truly awaken it, you will have to rely on yourself." In the training field of Qingyan Peak, Xiaochen sat cross-legged with his eyes closed. He did not use any essence and just sat there quietly. His mind was blank, and he did not think about anything. Around him, 500 long sabers were inserted into the ground in a circle around him. Faintly, a faint light was flickering on each of the long sabers. From time to time, they would spit out a cold glint. When one blinked, an illusion of 10,000 horses galloping and 1,000 soldiers roaring appeared in their minds. It was very majestic, as though it was happening right before their eyes. These 500 sabers all had their own origins. The lunar shadow saber, still in its scabbard, lay quietly beside Xiaochen. Among the 500 sabers, it looked very ordinary, not eye-catching at all. Lu Riyue stood quietly at the side and looked at Xiaochen, who was sitting cross-legged. She revealed a gentle smile and muttered to herself, "I hope it will be of some use." "Sis, can you comprehend listening to the sword and communicating with it by stabbing 500 broken sabers into the ground, and letting your imagination run wild? I think it is very mysterious," Lu Suifeng said as he ran behind Lu Riyue at some point in time. Lu Riyue's expression was as calm as water. There were no fluctuations in her expression. She said indifferently, "Broken sabers? Go and find 500 of these broken sabers for me to take a look. Every saber here was obtained from the ancient saber formation. Although they are not of high rank, they have existed for more than 10,000 years, and possess a trace of Tao. You actually call them broken sabers? I can't be bothered to say anything more." The full name of the saber formation in Saber City was the Ancient Absolute Saber Formation. It had existed since the ancient era, and had operated for more than 10,000 years. Even now, there were no signs of its might weakening. No one knew the origins of the saber formation. In the past hundreds and thousands of years, no one had entered the center of the saber formation to see what was supporting the operation of the ancient absolute saber formation. What made the saber formation famous was that as long as one could escape unscathed from the saber formation, they would be able to obtain a treasured saber. The longer one lasted in the saber formation, the more valuable the treasured saber would be. However, the saber formation was very dangerous. It was already very difficult for a martial saint to last for an hour. Even someone as strong as a martial monarch would not last more than half a day. If one wanted to obtain a treasured saber with a trace of Tao that had existed for more than 10,000 years, the chances were very small. It was clear how difficult it was for Lu Riyue to obtain 500 of such treasured sabers in one go. Lu Suifeng revealed an astonished expression. "Sis, 500 of such sabers. You probably moved half of the stock in the entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion. How did you do it?" Lu Riyue said softly. "Lu Chen owes me a favor. Coincidentally, his old man is in charge of these tools. So I borrowed them. After all, I have to return them after using them." So he agreed. Lu Suifeng's expression was exaggerated. He pretended to be hurt as he said, "Sis, I am starting to suspect if you are my biological sister. Why don't I receive such treatment? This is too hurtful." Lu Riyue looked at Lu Suifeng resentfully. She said, "Before you were 13 years old, did I not put in enough effort on you? I laid such a good foundation for you. Now you have wasted it all. You still have the cheek to say that?" Lu Suifeng laughed out loud. "Sis, I discovered that you are not calm, like you are hiding something. Have you fallen in love? Actually, I can help you matchmake. Look at Brother Yi. His future is boundless. He will not have any problems with the core disciple exam this time. Furthermore, he is already a superior grade martial grand master at the age of 16. His cultivation talent is not much weaker than yours. He is completely worthy of you. The most important thing is that Brother Yi does not seem to have anyone he likes. You can take advantage of this and, bang. Before Lu Suifeng could finish jabbering on, he heard a gust of wind. A slender leg appeared in front of him and kicked him heavily in the chest. There was a loud boom, and his body flew back rapidly like a sandbag. He cried out in pain in the air. He flew far away and crashed into the wall of the dueling grounds before falling to the ground. Lu Suifeng got up and felt his entire body aching. He could not help but groan in pain. This is really not an ordinary kind of pain. Haha. However, it seems like the result is good. There is hope, haha. When the somewhat drunk Bai saw Lu Suifeng suddenly land beside him, his face turned red. He cried out excitedly and sent out a palm strike. Ooh. A huge shockwave was created. The shockwave turned into a violent gale, sweeping Lu Suifeng's body into the air. When the gale returned, Lu Suifeng's body landed heavily on the ground once again. This time he fell even harder than before. His bones nearly broke. When Lu Suifeng saw the drunk Bai crying out with a slightly red face, he was startled. Damn! This little thing is getting drunk again. Quickly run. In the days when Xiaochen was not around, every time Bai got drunk, he would occasionally get drunk. Furthermore, he especially liked to use Lu Suifeng as a target. This had already left a deep impression on him. Because they were afraid of Xiaochen blaming them, they did not tell Xiaochen about this. Lu Suifeng circulated his essence and dashed out of the dueling grounds. Bai turned into a white phantom. His speed was much faster than Lu Suifeng's. He cried out and chased after him. Lu Riyue saw all this but did not care. This was not the first time Lu Suifeng had been chased by Bai. Although Bai was mischievous, he would not really injure Lu Suifeng. In Lu Riyue's opinion, this was a good way to train Lu Suifeng's reaction speed and ability to resist attacks. On the other hand, Xiaochen sat on the ground, focusing his mind on the spiritual pedestal. His mind was clear, and he did not think of anything as he sat there quietly. At the start, when Lu Riyue told him her first method, he felt it was strange, just like Lu Suifeng. However, since he chose to believe in Lu Riyue, he had to keep believing in her. He had to open his heart and trust her unreservedly. After an unknown amount of time, the world in front of Xiaochen suddenly changed. He discovered he was in a pitch-black space. There was nothing around him. His surroundings were completely silent. There was no sound at all. Huang dang dang. The 500 sabers on the ground suddenly started shaking non-stop. The shaking became more and more intense. The entire dueling grounds trembled slightly. Lu Riyue revealed an extremely joyful expression. She looked at Xiaochen on the ground and said, "The ancient saber intents have merged into one. Now it is up to you whether you can catch them or not. Do not disappoint me." The pitch-black space was like the galaxy outside. It was filled with boundless darkness. Suddenly, 10,000 spots of light appeared. It was like 10,000 lanterns slowly lighting up. In the dazzling space, it was extremely beautiful. Xiaochen was startled as he said, "What is this? Where exactly is this place? Wasn't I in Qingyan Peak's dueling grounds? How did I end up here?" Shua, shua. Just as Xiaochen was feeling suspicious, the 10,000 spots of light filled the sky and flew over. When they got close, Xiaochen discovered that these spots of light were actually sabers glowing with light. Huqi, huqi. Countless sabers glowed with light as they flew around in front of Xiaochen. They had long flaming tails behind them. In this pitch-black space, they displayed a different kind of splendor. Faster, faster, faster. An urgent voice kept ringing in Xiaochen's heart, urging him to hurry up. It was urging him to find a saber that belonged to him in this space. Ooh. A saber quickly flew towards Xiaochen like a meteor. Xiaochen was startled. If he was struck by this saber, he would die on the spot. He quickly dodged to the side. Shua, hua. A few more sabers continuously flew at Xiaochen. They were as fast as meteors. Xiaochen felt very anxious. He executed the blue dragon cloud soaring art and moved around continuously in this pitch-black space. Chapter 213. However, the more he dodged, the more sabers flew at him from the sky. In the end, it became very strenuous for him. Wounds of varying depths started to appear on his body, and blood dripped down. What exactly is this? Lu Suifeng, elder sister Riyue, can you hear me? Xiaochen shouted anxiously. However, aside from the whistling of saber lights, There was nothing else in this space. Quick! Quick! Find your saber! Find your saber! That urgent voice resounded in Xiao Chen's heart once again. It was like 10,000 horses galloping, 1,000 soldiers crossing the border. Urgent! 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 Xiao Chen looked around. Aside from saber lights, there were only saber lights. Where was his saber? He tried calling out to the universe ring in his hand a few times, but he could not open it. His saber was not here at all. Damn it! Where exactly is this place? Xiao Chen roared and stopped dodging. The dragon and tiger body sculpting art circulated rapidly. The bones in his body crackled as he executed the great dragon tiger fist continuously. The saber lights flying at him were shattered by the force of 6,000 kilograms of force. They turned into motes of starlight and disappeared into the boundless void. However, these saber lights seemed to be boundless. They were uncountable. No matter how many he shattered, there were still millions of saber lights flying at him. The dueling grounds of Qingyan Peak trembled continuously. Xiao Chen, who was sitting on the ground, frowned. His forehead was covered in sweat, and his eyes were tightly shut. He revealed a pained expression, as though he was in a nightmare. Lu Riyue's expression turned grave. She muttered, "Am I too anxious? Yi Chen, you can do it. Once you find your saber, you can come out. You can definitely do it." Lu Riyue intertwined her hands together, twisting them continuously. Unknowingly, her hands had already turned purple. However, Lu Riyue did not notice it. It was clear that she was feeling very conflicted. "Elder sister, what's wrong?" The commotion in the training grounds was too big. When Lu Suifeng, who had been chased out by Bai, saw the commotion, he immediately rushed back. When Bai, who was following behind Lu Suifeng, saw the pained expression on Xiao Chen's face, he seemed to be able to feel the anxiety in Xiao Chen's heart. His drunken state immediately disappeared. With a low roar, he turned into a white phantom and pounced toward Xiao Chen, who was surrounded by the ancient treasured saber. However, just as he pounced forward, a horrifying shockwave rose from the 500 sabers and sent Bai flying. He landed heavily on the ground and bounced a long distance. Bai's cute face suddenly revealed an extremely ferocious expression. Its black eyes turned blood red. It let out a long roar, and a monstrous aura spread out from its small body. Lu Riyue pushed off with her feet and teleported behind Bai. Her palm turned into a saber and struck Bai's neck, knocking it out before it went berserk. Rumble! On the spacious martial arts field, a strong wind blew. The bright space became dim, and the ground trembled even more violently. The 500 sabers fluttered and flickered non-stop. The clanging of the sabers reverberated in the training grounds. Lu Suifeng did not understand what was going on. He became even more anxious. "Elder sister, what is going on? What is going on?" Lu Riyue gently hugged the unconscious Bai and said, "I used these 500 sabers and the magic crystal stones under the training grounds to merge the ancient saber intent into a small ancient absolute saber formation." Lu Suifeng turned pale with fright. Ancient absolute saber formation? Yi Chen is at the center of the formation. Will he be fine? Lu Riyue's charming face was calm as she said, "Compared to the true ancient absolute saber formation, the might of this formation is much weaker. If you want to forcefully obtain the state of listening to the sword and communicating with it, you have to take some risks. It is impossible. However, you should have told him in advance. He was not mentally prepared at all. I was afraid he would not be able to walk out of it." The worry on Lu Suifeng's face did not lessen. Lu Riyue said unhurriedly, "There are some things that are meaningless if you know them in advance. As long as he can find his own saber, this ancient absolute saber formation will break on its own. At that time he will forcefully comprehend the first state of listening to the sword and communicating with it, listening to the sword." Boundless saber lights shot out in all directions in the dark space. Xiao Chen's body was like a tiger and a dragon. He relied on the huge strength of his physical body to shatter the sabers flying at him. Boom, boom, boom. The sounds of explosions rang out incessantly, reverberating in this boundless darkness. Although he would be fine for the time being, Xiao Chen became increasingly anxious. No matter how ferocious his strength was, There would come a time when it would run out. At that time, 10,000 sabers would pierce his heart, and he would have no chance of surviving. Quick, quick, draw your saber. Draw your saber. The anxious voice rang out incessantly again, lingering in Xiao Chen's ears. Bastard, you only know how to shout. You are bare-handed. Where did the saber come from? There is no reaction from the universe ring. Even if you shout 10,000 times, the saber will not come out. Xiao Chen could not help but curse loudly. However, no one answered his question. That anxious voice continued to ring out incessantly. Calm down, calm down. Xiao Chen did his best to calm his emotions. At this moment of life and death, his mind slowly cleared up. It seemed like ever since he entered this world, he had been in a state of anxiety, disrupting his normal thinking. Xiao Chen would not normally be this anxious. There was only one reason for this. It was the voice ringing out incessantly in his heart. That anxious figure, which was like 10,000 galloping horses, caused Xiao Chen's heart to be filled with anxiety, disrupting his thinking. If Xiao Chen wanted to leave this strange space and resolve this crisis, there was only one way. He had to find out where the voice was coming from and draw the saber it spoke of. Quick, quick, draw your saber. The anxious voice rang out again like a demonic voice. Xiao Chen focused and did his best to maintain a clear mind, not getting infected by the frenzy in the voice. So that's how it is. After a while, Xiao Chen understood. He revealed a calm smile on his face. Where the saber is, the voice will be. Where the saber is, the voice will be. In other words, where the voice is, the saber will be. A look of determination flashed on Xiao Chen's face. Where the voice is, isn't the voice in my heart. Crouching tiger, hidden dragon. Xiao Chen shouted and materialized the might of a tiger and dragon. He crossed his arms in front of him. With the tiger and dragon in his body, he could instantly block the force of tens of thousands of kilograms, fearless of mountains and rivers. Dang, 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 dang. The countless saber lights flying at him were blocked by a barrier of light. They trembled continuously. Xiao Chen pushed his arms forward and blocked all the saber lights. Pussy eye. Taking advantage of the fact that the saber lights could not reach him for a short period of time, Xiao Chen stabbed his 5 fingers into his heart like a sharp knife. Blood immediately gushed out like a fountain, flowing out continuously. Since that anxious voice came from his heart, naturally, the saber was in his heart as well. This place was definitely not a normal space. He should be in a mental illusion somewhere. However, even if it was a mental illusion, if one died, there was a high chance that one's real body would die as well. However, Xiao Chen had no other choice but to take a gamble. Suddenly, a resplendent light came out from his chest. The pained expression on Xiao Chen's face eased significantly. Then he slowly withdrew his right hand. A girl made of light followed Xiao Chen's right hand, and slowly flew out from his chest. When the girl's body completely left, the wound on Xiao Chen's chest quickly healed. Is this the saber hidden in my heart? Xiao Chen muttered to himself as he looked at the girl's appearance. He revealed an astonished expression. Qingyun Peak Dueling Grounds. Within the saber formation, the lunar shadow saber that Xiao Chen placed beside him suddenly trembled non-stop. With a huang-dang sound, it automatically came out of its scabbard and danced in the air. The instant the lunar shadow saber was drawn, the entire miniature ancient absolute saber formation stopped trembling. Shua. Suddenly Xiao Chen opened his eyes. He pushed off the ground and leaped into the air, grabbing the lunar shadow saber that was dancing non-stop. Xiao Chen had a solemn expression as he grasped the saber hilt with his right hand. He held the index and middle fingers of his left hand together, and slowly slid them from the bottom of the lunar shadow saber to the tip. As Xiao Chen's fingers slid across the saber lit up with a resplendent light. When his fingers slid across the tip of the saber, the light on the saber was already very resplendent and dazzling. After the light faded, the pitch-black lunar shadow saber turned completely white. The saber flickered with a cold light. It was even sharper than before. When Xiao Chen felt the energy in the lunar shadow saber, he revealed a smile. He said, "The seal is finally broken a little. The lunar shadow saber is now a superior grade profound ranked spirit weapon. It has officially advanced to an inferior grade earth ranked spirit weapon." When Lu Ruyue saw the lunar shadow saber transform successfully, her anxious face finally relaxed. She gently released Bai from her embrace. Wang, wang, wang. The frenzied shaking of the dueling grounds finally stopped. The 500 ancient treasured sabers containing Daos on the ground all left the ground and returned to their scabbards. Xiaochen slowly landed on the ground. He stretched out his hand, and the scabbard flew into his grasp. He sheathed his saber and revealed a faint smile on his face as he walked over to Lu Ruyue. Did you find the saber? Can you feel the saber's breathing and pulse? Lu Ruyue asked Xiaochen softly. Xiaochen shook his head and said helplessly, I did find it, but I did not feel anything special. The lunar shadow saber is different from what I imagined. In that pitch-black space, just as Xiaochen was about to see the appearance of the girl, she suddenly turned into countless figures of light. The entire space disappeared and he returned to reality. Lu Ruyue revealed a doubtful expression. She could not understand. She said, I clearly found my saber in that space, but why did I not enter the state of listening to the sword and communicating with it? Xiaochen thought for a while before saying, maybe the method is wrong. I will try another method tomorrow. That's all we can do. Lu Ruyue nodded before saying, that's right, there is still half a month before the core disciple exam begins. You can go and make some preparations. Use your contribution points to exchange for martial techniques in Qingyan Peak's library. Tomorrow, I will get Suifeng to bring you to the library. You should go back and rest first. At the same time, think about what martial techniques you want to exchange for. Chapter 214. Xiaochen nodded and carried the unconscious Bai into his embrace. He asked, what's wrong with Bai? Lu Suifeng said, it wanted to go berserk to save you, but my sis knocked it out first. Regardless of whether it was a cultivator or a spirit beast, going berserk would have a huge repercussions. This was especially so for Bai, which was still in its infancy state. The repercussions from going berserk would be even stronger. That's right, Brother Yi, you should make Bai drink less in the future. Lu Suifeng said gravely when he thought about how Bai had chased him all over the mountain. Xiaochen felt suspicious and asked, why? This is a little complicated to explain. Actually that. Lu Suifeng spoke incoherently for a long time, but he was still too embarrassed to say that Bai had chased him all over the place. It was night, the waning moon hung high in the sky, and the stars were dim. Xiaochen stood in his own courtyard, holding the lunar shadow saber in his right hand. He held 2 fingers on his left hand and moved them around the saber. The light on the snow-white saber became increasingly resplendent. As the friction intensified, the essence in Xiaochen's body was driven, pouring into the saber in an endless stream. In the next moment, streams of sharp saber chi spewed out from the saber, dancing wildly in the air. These saber chi were different from the saber chi of a regular cultivator. The sharp saber chi contained the power of thunder. Electricity danced along with the saber chi, filling the entire sky of the courtyard. Xiaochen released his fingers, and the saber chi in the air instantly disappeared. After the electricity flickered for a while, it also disappeared without a trace. After coming out from that pitch-black space, although Xiaochen did not comprehend the state of listening to the sword and communicating with it, he seemed to have comprehended another unknown state. This allowed him to unleash saber chi with electricity at the martial Grand Master realm. The might of this saber chi was even stronger than the saber chi of some inferior grade martial saints. Furthermore, its potential was far from being developed. Xiaochen collected his thoughts and looked at the snow-white lunar shadow saber in his hand. He was filled with doubts. This was the first time he realized that he could not understand this saber at all. Everything in that pitch-black space was very strange. After that, Xiaochen learned from Lu Ruyue that it was a spiritual space formed by the ancient saber intent. It could trigger the saber intent hidden in the depths of a cultivator's heart. After Xiaochen understood this, he became even more confused. The saber intent of the lunar shadow saber was actually that of an unfamiliar girl. Although he did not see her appearance clearly, Xiaochen was sure that it was not Ao Jiao. The next morning, sunlight shone through the window onto Xiaochen's face. Xiaochen opened his eyes and woke up from his cultivation. When he walked out of the courtyard, he saw Lu Suifeng waiting for him. Suifeng, sorry to keep you waiting. Xiaochen greeted. Lu Suifeng smiled gently. It's fine, I just arrived as well. I did not wait for long. Let's go. I'll bring you to the library. The two of them chatted happily as they walked to the top of the mountain. Along the way, Bai appeared out of nowhere and jumped onto Xiaochen's shoulder, startling Lu Suifeng. What's wrong? Xiaochen asked when he saw Lu Suifeng's shocked expression. Lu Suifeng smiled awkwardly. Nothing, let's continue on our way. That's right, how many contribution points do you have? What martial technique do you intend to exchange for? Xiaochen had already thought of what martial technique to exchange for. He did not need a cultivation technique for now. Although he was not clear on the rank of the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation, based on Xiaochen's slow cultivation speed, he knew that this Purple Thunder Divine Incantation would be sufficient for him to cultivate for a long time. He also did not need a fist technique or a movement technique. Thinking about it, Qingyun Peak did not have any martial techniques that surpassed the Great Dragon Tiger Fist and the Blue Dragon Cloud Soaring Art. There was no need to consider them. The only thing Xiaochen lacked was a good saber technique. After Xiaochen's improvements, the Rushing Thunder Saber technique had already reached the inferior grade earth ranked. However, it was too straightforward, there was no room for maneuver. If he met one or two enemies it would be fine. However, if he met a group of enemies with similar cultivation realms, it would be very difficult to deal with them. He could only use the changing character formula to simulate a martial technique. However, the changing character formula could simulate a martial technique. Before he made a breakthrough in his Battle Sage origins, the martial techniques that he copied would be very different from the martial techniques that he cultivated. Thus, Xiaochen urgently needed a saber technique. It would be best if it was an Earth-ranked 1 or above. Profound-ranked and Yellow-ranked ones were useless, they were just a waste of time. There was no need to consider it. However, he did not know if Qingyun Peak had any martial techniques above Earth-ranked. Thinking of this, Xiaochen asked, there are martial techniques above Earth-ranked in Qingyun Peak's library. I have 1,000 contribution points. Is that enough? A cocky smile appeared on Lu Suifeng's handsome face. He said, if you were in the other peaks, you would have to go through a lot of trouble to obtain an Earth-ranked martial technique. Furthermore, it would require a lot of contribution points. There would be very few Earth-ranked martial techniques to choose from. However, this is not a problem in Qingyun Peak. Qingyun Peak was once the top peak of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Among the 7 peaks, it has the most complete martial techniques. There are 15 Earth-ranked martial techniques, second only to the main hall's library. In a situation where Heaven-ranked martial techniques did not appear, Earth-ranked martial techniques were already the peak martial techniques in the continent. Any large clan that possessed an Earth-ranked martial technique would be able to prosper for several hundred years. The Heavenly Saber Pavilion was truly worthy of being a great sect with 10,000 years of inheritance. Just a random peak already had 15 Earth-ranked martial techniques. Their accumulations were truly shocking. I only have 1,000 contribution points, is that enough? Xiaochen asked worriedly. After all, this was the first time he was using contribution points to exchange for a martial technique. He did not know how much contribution points were worth. Lu Suifeng blushed with shame. Can you not use such a tone? What do you mean by I only have 1,000 contribution points? You speak as though 1,000 contribution points are nothing. How can I, a person who cannot even earn 500 contribution points in half a year, endure this? Xiaochen smiled faintly. I don't understand this. Just tell me if I can exchange for it or not. I can tell you with certainty that I can. You are not really going to exchange for it. You are just borrowing a handwritten copy. It is more than enough, there is no need to worry, Lu Suifeng said seriously. Hearing this, Xiaochen relaxed. If that was the case, he had underestimated the purchasing power of contribution points. Who knows, he might be able to borrow a superior grade Earth-ranked martial technique. The two of them continued towards the top of the mountain. The mountain path was rugged, but with their cultivations, it was like walking on flat ground. They advanced very quickly and before long, they saw a group of majestic pavilions and terraces. However, there was still a long way to go before they could reach their destination. The distance was not short. Suddenly Lu Suifeng, who was walking in front, stopped. He asked Xiaochen, "Brother Yi, what do you think of my elder sister?" The power of this question was very strong. When Xiaochen heard this, he was stunned. He stopped moving quickly. Bai, who was on his shoulder, nearly fell off. He glared fiercely at Lu Suifeng. Lu Suifeng ignored Bai, who was baring his fangs and brandishing his claws. He continued to smile and asked, "What do you think of my elder sister?" Xiaochen said carefully, "This depends on what I am talking about. Your question is too general." Lu Suifeng smiled gently and continued, "In that case, I will ask in more detail. Do you think my elder sister is pretty?" "She is very flirtatious, absolutely beautiful," Xiaochen said honestly after thinking for a while. Lu Suifeng laughed loudly and continued, "What do you think of my elder sister's martial arts?" "She is very talented, a dragon among men." "Then, does my elder sister treat you well?" "She spent a lot of effort to complete the ancient absolute saber formation yesterday, as well as all the other things in the past. And I have nothing more to say." The smile on Lu Suifeng's face became even wider. He said, "Say a girl like her should be someone that people would fight over. She should be a rare resource, right?" Xiaochen continued to nod his head. "And that is indeed the case. In that case, how about I introduce my elder sister to you?" Xiaochen's mind buzzed. He thought he heard wrong. He asked doubtfully, "What did you say? Say it again." Lu Suifeng laughed. "Is it not clear enough? In that case, I will say it slowly. How about you become my brother-in-law? You see." Wuxia, Bai, who was sitting on Xiaochen's shoulder, leaped up and landed on top of Lu Suifeng's head. His snow-white claws scratched Lu Suifeng's head continuously. The sudden situation caught Lu Suifeng off guard. His hands kept pulling upwards as he said anxiously, "Don't move. I just did my hair this morning. It hurts, it hurts, ah." In the end, the more he pulled, the more confused he became. Bai's speed was much faster than his. He could not keep up at all. In the confusion, he suddenly lost his balance and rolled down. Xiaochen was distracted by Lu Suifeng's question. When he heard Lu Suifeng cry out miserably, he recovered his wits. However, he discovered that it was too late to help. Lu Suifeng had already rolled down far away. However, although the mountain path was rugged, it was not steep. With Lu Suifeng's physique, he would only suffer some superficial wounds at most. Xiaochen smiled helplessly and turned around to continue walking up. Not long after, a gust of wind blew behind Xiaochen. Lu Suifeng had Bai on his head. His complexion was pale, and his hair was disheveled. He walked over to Xiaochen. "Big brother Yi, put away this little ancestor. It is playing with me to death." Bai squatted on Lu Suifeng's head. There was a faint smile on his face. His snow-white hands occasionally patted Lu Suifeng's forehead. His intelligent eyes looked innocently at Xiaochen. It was very moving. This little fellow did something bad, yet he still put on an innocent and cute appearance. It was impossible to get angry with him. Xiaochen could only carry him down and place him on the mountain path. Lu Suifeng finally heaved a sigh of relief. He brushed his hair back and continued to say to Xiaochen, "Brother Yi, what do you think of my earlier words? You answered my earlier questions very quickly. Stop hesitating. Didn't you say that everything about my sister is good? What are you hesitating for? Don't you like her? Just say the word and I will do it for you. I'm leaving." A white figure flew towards Lu Suifeng again. This time, Lu Suifeng was prepared and dodged to the side. When Xiaochen saw Bai was still messing around, he temporarily placed it in the spirit blood jade. Then he said to Lu Suifeng, "I do like her, but it is not that kind of like. Furthermore, I am not strong enough now. If there is someone I love, I will not be able to protect them. I can only focus on cultivation for now. Brother Lu, let's not talk about this anymore." Chapter 215. Lu Suifeng continued. You are all dragons and phoenixes among men. Being together will not affect your cultivation. Instead, you will improve together. There is no need to worry." When Xiaochen heard this, he smiled. He was truly amused by Lu Suifeng. "All right, you don't have to say any more. I know what you are thinking. You want me to distract your sister so that you can chase after Chu Xinyun in peace. But Xiao Chun withdrew his smile and said seriously, your sister is right. In this world where the strong rule, without sufficient strength, you cannot act rashly. You will understand this sooner or later. Lu Suifeng had lived under Lu Riyue's protection since he was young. He probably did not have many opportunities to go down the mountain. He did not understand this world as well as Xiao Chun. If this continued, he would be at a disadvantage sooner or later. However, Xiao Chun was about the same age as him, so he could not say it out loud. He could only shake his head in his heart. When Lu Suifeng saw that his trick was seen through, he laughed awkwardly. All right, let's not talk about this anymore. Let's go quickly. We have already wasted a lot of time. After that, the two of them did not say anything. They hurried on their way. Soon, under Lu Suifeng's lead, Xiao Chun arrived at Qingyan Peak's library. More than 10 divine saber camp bladesmen stood on both sides expressionlessly. Even though they had withdrawn their killing chi, when they stood side by side, they still gave off a sense of pressure. Xiao Chun did not expect to meet people from the divine saber camp here. However, when he thought about it, he understood. The place where any sect or faction kept their secret manuals was a forbidden area. For the Heavenly Saber Pavilion to send people from the Divine Saber Camp to guard this place was reasonable. There were probably more hidden guards than the ones in front of him. Xiao Chun did not dare to casually extend out his spiritual sense. He followed behind Lu Suifeng and slowly walked towards the door of the library. After he handed over his identity token, the Divine Saber Camp bladesmen did not say anything and let him in. Behind the door of the library, there was a tall wooden table. It was similar to the counter of a restaurant. There was a black-robed old man behind the wooden table. Xiao Chun could not tell what cultivation realm he was at. He sipped tea and focused on reading. The old man felt Xiao Chun's gaze and gently put down the book in his hand. He smiled amiably at Xiao Chun. Little brother, you are finally here. When Xiao Chun heard this, he was slightly stunned. He did not seem to know this old man. When Lu Suifeng saw the situation, he stepped forward and explained, "This is my first uncle Lu Qing. He was injured 20 years ago. The ice crystal flower you snatched back then saved my first uncle's life." Xiao Chun understood. So that was the case. He was of the same generation as the previous peak master. That meant that his status was already very high. He did not dare to slight him. He stepped forward and said, "Yichen greets Senior. In the end, I should be the one bowing to you. If it were not for you, I would have lost my life long ago." Xiao Chun could not figure out Lu Qing's cultivation. Furthermore, he was a senior. How could Xiao Chun dare to accept his bow? He quickly said, "Senior is too serious. It was just a small matter. Suifeng, bring him to the second floor. I will only charge half the contribution points for the secret manuals he chose today." Lu Qing nodded. He was very satisfied with Xiao Chun's humble attitude. Xiao Chun did not expect there to be such a benefit. He quickly thanked Lu Suifeng and followed Lu Suifeng, quickly heading to the second floor of Qingyan Peak's library. The library was split into 2 floors. The first floor was filled with yellow-ranked and profound-ranked secret manuals. There were no earth-ranked secret manuals. The second floor was filled with superior-grade profound-ranked secret manuals. Sha. When Xiao Chun arrived at the second floor, he heard the sound of pages flipping. It was very quiet on the second floor. Could there be other people here? When Xiao Chun looked carefully, there were indeed many people from the other peaks seriously choosing secret manuals. Lu Suifeng explained, "Don't find it strange. These are the core disciples of the sect. The core disciples have the right to go to the other peaks and choose secret manuals." Xiao Chun nodded and ignored them. After he found out where the secret manuals for saber techniques were kept, he immediately went over and started choosing. There were only 15 Earth-ranked secret manuals in Qingyan Peak's library. Ignoring cultivation techniques, palm techniques, and movement techniques, Xiao Chun only found 3 inferior-grade Earth-ranked saber techniques and 1 medial-grade Earth-ranked saber technique. As for superior-grade Earth-ranked saber techniques, there was not a single one. Medial-grade Earth-ranked saber technique, withered tree saber technique. There was a total of 18 moves. It was comprehended by an almighty senior in front of a 10,000-year-old withered tree. This saber technique was simple and condensed. It was calm and imposing. There were no extravagant or complicated moves. It did not require a high comprehension ability to practice it. However, it was easy to learn but hard to master. The essence of this saber technique required one to comprehend the longevity of the withered tree, enduring silently for 10,000 years. Only then would one be able to practice it to great perfection. Withered tree saber technique. Just from the name, one could tell the style of this saber technique. It was tenacious and heavy. It was a simple saber technique. It was good, but unfortunately it did not suit Xiaoqian's style. Furthermore, Xiaoqian's spirit was not of the wood attribute. It would be difficult for him to reach great perfection. The only medial grade earth-ranked saber technique was not suitable for him. Xiaoqian felt it was unfortunate. Then, he looked at the remaining 3 inferior grade earth-ranked saber techniques. Mountain-splitting saber technique, inferior grade earth-ranked saber technique. There was a total of 9 moves. It was large, ferocious, and tyrannical. When practiced to great perfection, it would be easy to split mountains. This was one of the more widespread inferior grade earth-ranked saber techniques in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Many people had practiced it before. When Xiaoqian was underground, he had seen Ma Chen use it. Its might was indeed extraordinary. There were no requirements for the attribute of the cultivator's martial spirit. It was a choice. Xiaoqian slowly placed it down. If there were no other choices, he would choose it. Xiaoqian continued looking. The remaining 2 saber techniques were the Wind and Thunder saber technique and the Lingyun saber technique. The Wind and Thunder saber technique was a superior grade profound ranked saber technique. However, it had very high requirements for practicing it. One had to have a dual attributed martial spirit to practice it. There were very few people with such a physique. Hence, it was not very popular. Hence, it was demoted to inferior grade profound ranked. The Lingyun saber technique had a total of 18 moves. It was created by a senior of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion on the highest peak of the Lingyun mountain range. After cultivating it for 100 years, he suddenly comprehended it while looking at the majestic Lingyun mountain range. Unfortunately, this saber technique was not a complete saber technique. Xiaoqian did not know why, but he destroyed the final 3 moves of this saber technique. This resulted in this saber technique, which was originally comparable to a peak superior grade earth-ranked saber technique, being demoted to inferior grade earth-ranked. Because it was missing the final 3 moves, it was not a complete martial technique. Furthermore, it had very high requirements for comprehension. Hence, like the Wind and Thunder saber technique, very few people practiced it. Of the 4 saber techniques, the Withered Wood saber technique did not match. The Wind and Thunder saber technique had too high requirements. Xiaoqian could only choose from the mountain-splitting saber technique and the Lingyun saber technique. The names of these 2 saber techniques were very interesting. One was named Mountain Splitting, and the other was named Mountain Range. Xiaoqian did not know if the mountain-splitting saber technique that he practiced to great perfection would be able to split the Lingyun mountain range that he practiced to great perfection. The 2 saber techniques had their own unique points. However, the Lingyun saber technique was on a higher level. However, because it had a higher requirement for comprehension and was missing the final 3 moves, there were not as many people practicing it as there were for the mountain-splitting saber technique. After thinking for a while, Xiaoqian picked up the Lingyun saber technique. I'll choose this. Although the mountain-splitting saber technique is the complete version, there are too many people practicing it in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. It is too ordinary. The Lingyun saber technique was more suitable for him. Although it had a higher requirement for comprehension, Xiaoqian lacked a lot of things. However, he lacked comprehension. He was not afraid of not being able to practice this Lingyun saber technique well. Who knew, with his current comprehension, it might even be possible for him to comprehend the final 3 moves by himself. After making up his mind, Xiaoqian started to flip through the Lingyun saber technique. After flipping a few pages, he finished reading the introduction. However, he discovered that there were only blank pages. The meridian circulation routes, the mental cultivation method, the names of the moves, there was nothing. Xiaoqian flipped through the other secret manuals. and discovered that they were the same. There were only rough introductions, and the rest were blank pages. After thinking for a while, Xiaochen understood the crux of the matter. Most cultivators had very good memories. If all the cultivation techniques here were completely recorded, they would be able to memorize them in half a day. They could memorize a martial technique in half a day. Furthermore, there were geniuses with photographic memory. They would probably be able to memorize all the martial techniques in the Compendium Pavilion in a day. Given this, the rule of using contribution points to exchange for martial techniques would be useless. It would be more troublesome to obtain the secret manual than he imagined. After putting away the Lingyun saber technique, Xiaochen did not see Lu Suifeng. He was not in a rush to return, so he started to wander around the second floor. Xiaochen started to wander around the bookshelves. Occasionally he would flip through the various martial techniques. Looking at the introductions was a way to broaden his horizons. In the future, if he met an enemy who practiced this type of martial technique, he would be able to get a rough idea of it. As he wandered around, Xiaochen discovered a strange martial technique in the corner of a bookshelf. There was a note behind the simplified 9 saber, heavenly exterminating formation. This secret manual was still in the process of being theorized. It was not perfected yet. It was for reference only. 9 saber heavenly exterminating formation. Isn't that one of the 3 great formations of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion? Why is it here? Furthermore, it is a simplified version. Xiaochen's interest was piqued. He quickly picked it up and flipped through it. Unfortunately, it was the same as the other martial techniques. The simplified version of the 9 saber heavenly exterminating formation only had a rough introduction. The detailed method of operation was not written in it. Yichen, have you chosen your martial technique? Lu Suifeng asked as he strolled over from behind. Xiaochen carefully put away the simplified martial technique. When he saw the secret manual in Lu Suifeng's hands, he could not help but be astonished. The one in your hands seems to be an Earth-ranked secret manual. Lu Suifeng nodded and said, and it is an inferior grade Earth-ranked cultivation technique. This is the contribution points that I earned from working as a caretaker at Jade Maiden Peak for the past half a year. This time, I can use it before the core disciple exam. After the two of them spoke, they headed down the stairs. At the top of the stairs, there was a person in his 20s. He was wearing the gray robes of the Gongyu Peak cultivators. He had a rather handsome face, but he gave off a sinister aura. When Lu Suifeng saw this person, his expression changed. He said in surprise, Wang Rong, when did you come back? When Wang Rong saw Lu Suifeng's appearance, he smiled gently. He revealed an expression of disdain. I just came back. After a year, you have not changed at all. No, you have become even weaker than before. Move aside. Wang Rong casually pushed Lu Suifeng's shoulder with his palm. He did not seem to use much strength, but Lu Suifeng's body was pushed back uncontrollably. Chapter 216. Xiaochen took a step forward and placed his right hand on Lu Suifeng's back, neutralizing the force. Only then did Lu Suifeng slowly stabilize himself. His expression was somewhat unsightly as he thanked Xiaochen in a soft voice. Wang Rong smiled faintly and revealed a trace of mockery in his eyes. He said, You are even weaker than I thought. You cannot even withstand a single blow. Don't go overboard. Wang Rong, this is Qingyan Peak. Lu Suifeng said angrily. Wang Rong smiled faintly and said, Did I do anything? I was just letting you go. There is no need to use Qingyan Peak's name to suppress me. You are not even a core disciple. You are not worthy. Wang Rong. Xiaochen repeated this name a few times in his heart. He felt like he had heard this name before. However, he could not recall it and could not be bothered to. Wang Rong snorted coldly and walked past Lu Suifeng. When he reached Xiaochen's side, he suddenly stopped. He turned his head back and mocked. I forgot, you do not care about the status of a core disciple. After all, you have a powerful elder sister protecting you. No matter how much your ranking falls, you will not be chased off the mountain. When Xiaochen heard the words ranking, he finally remembered who Wang Rong was. He was a ruthless person ranked 20th in the Hall of Contributions. Xiaochen had only caught a glimpse of him that day, so he did not have much of an impression of him. He did not immediately remember him. However, Xiaochen did not know what grudge Lu Suifeng had with this person. It seemed like something serious happened between the two of them. The moment they met, the smell of gunpowder was very strong. Lu Suifeng's complexion turned pale. He clenched his right fist tightly and veins bulged on his forehead. He wanted to say something to refute, but in the end, he did not say anything. When Wang Rong saw that Lu Suifeng did not say anything, he felt bored. He snorted coldly and walked forward without turning his head back. Boom. In the quiet pavilion there was an explosion. It was like a sudden clap of thunder, causing the entire pavilion to tremble. The image of a ferocious tiger merged with Xiaochen's body. All the bones in his body crackled. There was a loud roar as he punched at Wang Rong's back. The instant the clap of thunder rang out, Wang Rong immediately felt the murderous intent and the terrifying fist wind. Without any time to think, Zhang Xian swiftly turned around, clenched his right hand, and punched out. Bang! Wang Rong felt his arm go numb and extremely sore. His body flew backward, and the qi and blood in his body surged. His figure landed on the second floor. Xiaochen's punch came without any warning. Furthermore, he did not hold back at all. 6,000 kilograms of force combined with the elementary grade earth-ranked fist technique transformed into a ferocious tiger leaving the mountain. In the narrow corridor, Wang Rong did not have a chance to pull out the long saber at his waist. Furthermore, he had underestimated the strength of Xiaochen's fleshly body. He had charged head-on and suffered a great loss in an instant. Rumble! Wang Rong stomped on the ground ferociously, deflecting Xiaochen's horrifying force. Instantly, all the bookshelves on the second floor shook non-stop. The secret manuals on the shelves fell to the ground. That is Wang Rong, ranked 20th on the wind cloud list. He spends most of his time cultivating outside. Why is he back? Furthermore, he is fighting with someone. Who is so bold to challenge Wang Rong? In the ranking war last year, Wang Rong's methods were the cruelest. He did not care about being in the same sect. He even killed someone. If it were not for his talent being too high, he would have been chased off the mountain long ago. It must be someone in the top 20 on the wind cloud list. Otherwise, no one would dare to take the initiative to provoke him. Furthermore, he caused such a huge commotion. The quiet second floor immediately became noisy. The people who were choosing secret manuals all came out. When they saw Wang Rong's appearance, they were all incomparably astonished. The so-called wind cloud list was the signboard with golden lacquer on the background of the ranking hall. The competition for the 500 spots was the most intense in the entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Those who were able to leave their names on it were all geniuses. Outside of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, such a person could become an overlord of an area and shake the world. Hence, this ranking was also known as the wind cloud list. Those who were able to enter the top 20 were geniuses among geniuses. They could be called demonic geniuses. Wang Rong was such a demonic genius. Who exactly is fighting with Wang Rong? Everyone was very curious. They all looked towards the staircase. They wanted to know who the person below was, and where he got his confidence from. Ta. Xiaochen slowly walked up. His figure slowly appeared in front of everyone. When everyone saw Xiaochen's appearance, they did not expect him to be the one challenging Wang Rong. Qingyan peeks Yichun. It is actually him. Everyone was astonished. A person who had entered the inner sect less than half a year ago actually challenged Wang Rong, who was in the top 20 of the wind cloud list. Wang Rong's face was filled with rage. Just as he was about to draw his saber, he discovered that his right hand was not listening to him. After he checked it, he was startled. Tiny beads of blood flowed out of the pores on his right arm. In a short period of time, there was no chance for his right hand to recover. Wang Rong cursed in his heart. Damn it, he was too careless. Just how much strength did this guy have in his punch? His entire right hand didn't listen to him. Wang Rong was most proficient in saber techniques. He had never trained his physical body before. There was no way for him to gather more essence into his right arm in a short period of time. Hence, he was not a match for Xiaochen in terms of strength. Bastard! How dare you sneak attack me? I will make you pay the price. Wang Rong's face was filled with rage as he shouted at Xiao Chun. Before Wang Rong returned to the mountain, he had already reached peak inferior grade martial saint. Although he noticed Xiao Chun, he saw that Xiao Chun was only a superior grade martial grandmaster, so he did not care about him at all. He did not expect this person to sneak attack him. Furthermore, his strength was so strong that he was able to cripple his right arm. Yi Chen, don't injure him. You are not a match for him. Lu Suifeng ran over and blocked Xiao Chun. He said, his cultivation is much higher than yours. Even if you suffer now, you will not be able to handle him in the future if he comes looking for trouble with you. When Xiao Chun saw Lu Suifeng's worried expression, he sighed in his heart. He is too naive. Now that I have injured him, a grudge has already been formed. Could it be that if I let him go, Wang Rong will not come looking for trouble with me in the future? Given Wang Rong's character, would he not take revenge? In this world, if one had to be overcautious in everything they did, afraid of this and that, living would be too stifling. From the moment Xiao Chun decided to make a move, he did not think too much. This person had insulted his friend in front of him, and even made a move to mock him. If there was no chance of victory, Xiao Chun would choose to endure silently. However, now that there was a chance to defeat the other party, if he did not make a move, he would be going against his own conscience. As for revenge in the future, by the time he thought about it, his opponent would already be on the second floor. If he wanted to make a move, there would be no chance. He could only regret it. Xiao Chun had always been a decisive person. Once he decided on something, he would not hesitate to make a move. He would use his lightning-fast strength to defeat his opponent. Do you want to live in the shadow of this person for the rest of your life? Xiao Chun stared at Wang Rong. He did not intend to give up. When Lu Suifeng heard this, he was stunned. He had a complicated expression on his face. However, you and I are not a match for him. He is the only person in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion who practiced the Wind and Thunder Saber technique to great perfection in the past few years. Dang, dang, dang. A few figures appeared from somewhere. Lu Qing's figure slowly descended. He looked coldly at Wang Rong and said, "Go, don't appear in Qingyan Peak again." When Wang Rong heard Lu Qing's words, he felt as though he was relieved of a heavy burden. He leaped up a few times and quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. He had clearly seen the ruthlessness in Xiao Chun's eyes earlier. Wang Rong, who had wandered around, was very familiar with that gaze. The great bandits he had seen in the past all had the same gaze. They were cold and emotionless, decisive in killing. Wang Rong believed that even if Lu Suifeng were here, he would not be able to stop this person. In the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, Wang Rong would not dare to kill him. However, he would be able to make him bedridden for a few months. I cannot leave such a person alive. Otherwise, there will be endless trouble in the future. I have to find an opportunity to kill him after he goes down the mountain. A murderous intent flashed in Wang Rong's eyes as he thought to himself resolutely. Seeing Wang Rong leave, Xiao Chun felt it was a pity. He was very clear on what kind of person Wang Rong was. Originally, he was prepared to injure him and make him bedridden for a few months. However, since Lu Qing had spoken, it was not appropriate for Xiao Chun to make a move. He could only be more careful in the future and guard against Wang Rong's revenge. Xiao Chun and Lu Suifeng went down to the first floor and handed the secret manuals they had chosen to Lu Qing. Lu Qing wanted to deal with Lu Suifeng first before receiving the secret manuals that Xiao Chun handed over. When Lu Qing saw the first secret manual, he had a slightly startled expression. He said, "Lingyun's saber technique. This is an incomplete earth-ranked saber technique. Furthermore, it has a high requirement for comprehension ability. Little brother, are you sure you want this?" Xiao Chun nodded. "Senior, there is no need to worry. I made this decision after careful consideration." Seeing that Xiao Chun was so certain, Lu Qing did not try to persuade him. He looked for Xiao Chun and asked for 400 contribution points. After that, Xiao Chun took out the Lingyun Saber Technique's secret manual and a jade strip. "Drip a drop of blood on it and repeat after me. Then this secret manual will be yours." Xiao Chun did as he was told. Then he repeated after Xiao Chun. "I, Xiao Chun, swear to my heart demon that I will never teach the Lingyun Saber Technique that I learned to others. If I go back on this oath, I will suffer a backlash from my heart demon. I will break my meridians and die. Xiao Chen was astonished in his heart. What a vicious oath. So, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion uses such a method to prevent the secret manuals from being taught to others. I wonder if there will be such an effect if I teach it to others. Regardless of whether it was effective or not, Xiao Chen would not try it easily. That jade strip was a little strange. It was better to be safe than sorry. If the oath came true, there would be no chance for regrets. After Lu Qing swore to his heart demon, he handed the Lingyun Saber Technique's secret manual to Xiao Chen. Then, she received the second secret manual from Xiao Chen and looked at the name of the secret manual. Lu Qing could not help but reveal a smile. Little friend, why did you choose this? This does not seem to be a martial technique, right? Xiao Chen nodded. And I know. I just want to study it. The Heavenly Saber Pavilion's 3 great saber formations are famous throughout the world. Who knows, I might be able to comprehend something by analogy. Chapter 217. Lu Qing shook his head and smiled. If that is the case, then I will have to disappoint you. Although this book is called the simplified version of the 9-saber Heavenly Exterminating Formation, it has nothing to do with it. This book is based on the 9-saber Heavenly Exterminating Formation. Although it is very powerful, it requires 9 cultivators of similar cultivation to cooperate strictly. The requirements are very high, and it only exists in theory. Aside from the person in charge of the formation, the other 8 people need to be like this person's arm. They need to move freely and naturally, without any hesitation or pause. If there is any disharmony, the formation will immediately fail and cause a backlash. Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows, and a strange look flashed in his eyes. He said, "Old senior, how do you know so clearly?" Lu Qing smiled faintly and said, "I am not talented, but I was the one who wrote this book. So that's how it is. No wonder he is so familiar with it and knows it so clearly." Xiao Chen said, "In that case, I will listen to senior and not look at this book." Wait a moment. Lu Qing stopped Xiao Chen and handed him a complete simplified version of the 9-saber Heavenly Exterminating Formation. It is fine to look at it sometimes. Who knows, you might be able to find a solution in the future. Xiao Chen was slightly stunned. After he received it and thanked Lu Qing, he immediately left the library. Outside the library, Lu Suifeng sat alone on the stone steps. His expression was very lonely. He was probably still thinking about Wang Rong's return. Xiao Chen walked over to his side. He was not sure what kind of grudge Lu Suifeng had with Wang Rong, so he did not know how to console him. Sometimes it was fine to suffer a setback. It was fine as long as one could learn from the humiliation and move forward bravely. However, Xiao Chen did not know if Lu Suifeng could figure it out. If he was unable to recover from this setback, he would only develop a heart demon, and his cultivation would come to a halt. "Brother Yi, did you obtain the secret manual? Let's go down the mountain. Thank you for helping me earlier." When Lu Suifeng heard Yi Chen's footsteps, he got up and forced a smile. Xiao Chen patted his shoulder and said, "We are friends. It is only right for me to help you." On the way down, Lu Suifeng was silent. He was not as happy as he was when he first came up the mountain. The two of them walked down the mountain in silence. Wait. After the two of them walked for a while, a voice suddenly appeared in their minds. They stopped and exchanged glances. They could see a trace of doubt in each other's eyes. Suddenly, Lu Suifeng closed his eyes as though he was communicating with the voice. After a while, he opened his eyes and said to Xiao Chen, "My old man wants you to go to the summit. He wants to see you." Lu Suifeng's father, the previous peak master of Qingyan Peak, the person who controlled the divine weapon and lived at the peak. Xiao Chen was. He actually wanted to. Xiao Chen to ask. Xiao Chen to. Saber. Lu. Chen. Xiao. Chen. Chen nodded to. With. Xiao Chen nodded. He executed the blue dragon cloud soaring art and dashed on the mountain path. In the blink of an eye, he had traveled a few hundred meters. Lu Suifeng watched as Xiao Chen disappeared. He muttered, I really don't understand. A few months ago, his strength was about the same as mine. Now I can't see through him at all. He might even be able to fight against Wang Rong." When Lu Suifeng thought of Wang Rong, he revealed an expression of hatred and helplessness. Qingyun Peak was 4,000 or 5,000 meters tall. The higher one went, the steeper the path became. In the end, there was no longer a complete path. There was only a precipitous mountain. Clouds lingered at the top of the mountain. A strong wind blew, making people's clothes flutter. Xiaochen looked around. The cliff was smooth and there was still a kilometer of height. He could not find a suitable place to borrow strength from. The small perfection blue dragon cloud soaring art was unable to fly. Xiaochen could only use the gravity spell and fly to the top of the mountain. Using the gravity spell at a height of several thousand meters exhausted a lot of essence. Furthermore, the strong wind blew. This last part of the journey was very slow. Xiaochen felt like he was ascending to the heavens. He did not know how Lu Suifeng managed to get up there in the past. After making it to the top of the mountain, Xiaochen landed firmly on the ground. At the top of the mountain, an old man sat cross-legged on a rock. His expression did not change at all. It was like he was one with the rock. Beside the rock was the divine weapon that could destroy the world. It was placed quietly in a wooden box, looking very ordinary. Xiaochen had always been curious about the old man's identity. He had an uncertain guess. Now that he saw the old man, he sized him up carefully. However, he discovered that the old man was different from the person in his memory. After coming to such a conclusion, for some reason, Xiaochen heaved a sigh of relief. The old man slowly opened his eyes and looked at Xiaochen. He smiled faintly and said, "I did not expect us to meet again so soon. Successor of the Thunder King, is the scabbard I gave you useful?" When Xiaochen heard this, he was startled. A strange light flashed in his eyes. He stared at the old man and said, "So it really is you." The identity of the Thunder King's successor was Xiaochen's most sensitive identity. When he heard this person mention it again, he quickly placed his right hand on the saber hilt. He gathered his aura and prepared to make a move at any moment. The old man smiled faintly and said, "There is no need to be nervous. If I wanted to harm you, I would not have given you this scabbard that day. Otherwise, the people from the Elders' Assembly would have sensed the aura of the thunder would sword long ago and killed you on the spot." Although Xiaochen said that, he did not lower his guard at all. The feeling of having his life in someone else's hands made him very uncomfortable. If Xiaochen understood the old man in another way, if the old man wanted to harm him, all he had to do was announce Xiaochen's identity and he would face a calamity. Xiaochen said sullenly, "In that case, why did you call me here? It can't be that you just want to meet me, right?" The old man did not answer Xiaochen's question directly. He said, "Although I cannot leave the coiling mountain rock under my feet, everything that happens in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion cannot be hidden from my eyes." "Cannot leave the rock I'm sitting on?" Xiaochen extended out his spiritual sense and looked carefully at the rock the old man was sitting on. When he scanned it with his spiritual sense, something that could not be seen with the naked eye appeared in Xiaochen's mind. On the coiling mountain rock, there were black tentacles wrapped around the old man's body like vines. The tentacles were extremely horrifying. They gave off a black demonic qi. Xiaochen withdrew his spiritual sense and looked again. However, he discovered that everything was normal. He did not see anything. So that was the case. Back then, when Biyun Peak Song Ke came to kill his way here, the old man was unable to help. The reason was probably these black tentacles. The feeling the tentacles gave Xiaochen was similar to the Corpse King imprint that appeared in his body before. When the old man felt Xiaochen's spiritual sense, there was some astonishment in his eyes. What a strong soul energy! It is already as strong as mine. Furthermore, it seems like he is even more proficient in using it than me. Xiaochen withdrew his gaze and said indifferently, "What you can see is none of my business. I came to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion as a private person. I only came to learn listening to the sword and communicating with it. I will not cause any trouble in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Senior, please do not mention my identity as the Thunder King's inheritor." The old man's expression did not change. He smiled gently and said, "Nothing in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion can be hidden from my eyes." After saying that, the old man paused for a while. He gave Xiaochen a deep look before continuing. This includes everything that happened in the spirit vein realm, which is the herb field. This time, Xiaochen was completely astonished. He did not expect such a secret to be discovered by this person in the underground world. Doesn't that mean that everything that happened in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion is under the control of this person? The old man continued, "Don't overthink this. Although I can see everything in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, I will not keep an eye on a person for no reason. That would exhaust a lot of energy. Most of my attention is focused on the spatial crack in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. I do not have time to care about you. The reason I noticed you in the spirit vein realm was because I had to deal with the Heavenly Wolf race's Fiend King. So I split some of my soul energy." Xiaochen felt more at ease. However, he still did not understand. "You have been talking for so long. You still have not told me why you are looking for me." "Young man, don't be impatient. There are some things that cannot be explained with just a few words." The old man's expression did not change. He said indifferently, "Since you have received benefits from a senior of my Heavenly Saber Pavilion, and my daughter taught you listening to the sword and communicating with it, can I ask you for a favor?" "Help." Xiaochen did not hesitate to ask this question. After receiving a favor, he had to repay it. This made perfect sense. He cupped his hands and said, "As long as it is within my capabilities, I am willing to help." However, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion is filled with talents. What kind of favor do they need a pawn like me to help? This was the question that Xiaochen was truly puzzled about. Xiaochen was not that arrogant. With his current strength, there were too many people stronger than him in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. He could not understand why the old man would ask him for help. Thus, Xiaochen kept an eye out. He would only help if it was within his capabilities. If it was beyond his capabilities, he would not be able to help even if he wanted to. Naturally, it is within your capabilities. Furthermore, this is something that only you can do. Remember your promise today. What exactly did the old man want Xiaochen to help with? When Xiaochen left the summit, he did not know. The old man only said to remember today's promise. Making a promise for no reason at all, Xiaochen felt somewhat depressed. However, time was of the essence. When he arrived at the dueling grounds, he started to comprehend listening to the sword and communicating with it anxiously with Lu Riyue's help. There was no time to be depressed. When he returned to his courtyard at night, he started to cultivate anxiously, learning the Lingyun saber technique. Time passed very quickly every day. There was almost no time for him to relax. Aside from cultivating, there was more cultivating. At the same time, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's annual core disciple exam entered a countdown. The entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion entered a state of bitter cultivation. Even some of the core disciples did not dare to relax. This was because according to the rules, the low-ranked core disciples would have to fight with the ordinary disciples taking the exam. If they fought, they would lose their core disciple status. Such a rule was a form of motivation for them. They did not dare to be negligent. Chapter 218. Lingyun Mountain Range, Tianyue Peak. In a forest, a young disciple wearing Tianyue Peak's uniform was practicing his saber. His saber whistled and gave off a bright light, creating a strong wind. In one moment, this person was like a butterfly spreading its wings, agile and graceful. In the next moment, he was like a soaring eagle, looking down on everything. Everywhere the saber light passed, grass was destroyed, tree trunks bent, leaves danced on the ground, and petals fell. Everlasting startling cloud. Suddenly, the young man shouted and chopped out with his saber. The saber light on the saber condensed into a thin line, and shot out with a shio sound. The thin line of saber chi slowly thinned until it was so thin that it could not be seen with the naked eye, as though it had disappeared. However, the young man revealed a satisfied smile. He sheathed his saber with a huangdang sound. The instant the saber entered the scabbard, boom! In a straight line 500 meters in front of this person, all the trees were chopped in half. The trees fell down continuously. This was not over yet. Suddenly, a thin line of saber chi appeared in front of him. It was the saber light that he thought disappeared earlier. The instant all the trees fell, it spread out with a schwa sound, like an unfolding curtain of water. It created a layer of ripples in the air. Everywhere it passed, the surrounding trees were directly annihilated into powder, turning into dust that filled the sky and danced with the wind. Great saber technique. An old man wearing gray robes slowly walked out from the forest. He was the third elder in charge of teaching martial techniques on Tianhua Peak. When the young man saw the old man, he quickly said respectfully, "Third elder, you are too polite." The third elder revealed a faint smile and said softly, "Zhang Lai, I am not being polite. In the past few hundred years, you are the first person to be able to practice the Lingyun saber technique to great perfection and comprehend the 16th move on your own. Although you joined my Tianhua Peak midway, in my opinion, your comprehension ability and talent rank within the top 10 in the entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Furthermore, you did not slack off in your daily cultivation. You did not waste your talent." This person was Zhang Lai, the son of the Yunyang City's Zhang family head, who had taken over Xiao Chen's spot. Hearing the elder's praise, Zhang Lai's face also revealed a smile, but his tone was still humble. "Third elder is too kind. I still have many areas that I need to improve in." The third elder nodded his head in satisfaction. He said, "It is good to be humble. However, a cultivator can be arrogant, but they must have a lofty character. I want you to help my Tianhua Peak obtain first place in this core disciple exam. Can you do it?" Zhang Lai said in a deep voice, "This disciple will definitely accomplish his mission and obtain this honor for Tianhua Peak." "Very good. There is still room for improvement in this everlasting startling cloud. There are still 7 days left before the assessment. You don't have to participate in the daily special training at Tianhua Peak. Focus on comprehending the everlasting startling cloud to the great accomplishment realm. At that time, no one in the same realm as you will be your match," the third elder said as he looked at Zhang Lai. Hearing this, Zhang Lai's face revealed a joyful expression. He had only comprehended the everlasting startling cloud for a short period of time. If he wanted to master it, he would still need some time. Right now, it could be said that the third elder had helped him greatly. "Many thanks, third elder. When the time comes, I will not disappoint you." In a dense forest in the back mountains of Qingyan Peak, Xiaochen sheathed his saber with a huangdang sound. All the trees in a straight line a kilometer in front of him were all chopped in half. A water-like curtain of light spread out, and the surrounding trees were all crushed into powder, which danced in the air with a howl. The Lingyun saber technique is indeed worthy of being a peak earth-ranked saber technique. Its might is not much weaker than a heaven-ranked saber technique. If I can comprehend the last 2 moves, I wonder how strong it will be. As Xiaochen looked at the scene in the forest, he felt deeply moved. After consuming the flowing light flower, the increase in comprehension far surpassed what Xiaochen had imagined. This Lingyun saber technique had a very high requirement for comprehension. Xiaochen had only used a week to learn the first 15 moves. Tonight, he had unintentionally comprehended the 16th move of the Lingyun saber technique, Everlasting Startling Cloud. The so-called Everlasting Startling Cloud was to retract the energy of a cultivator into a line and stretch it out endlessly. Then it would explode out violently. In that case, what was the next move, Twisting Road Around Peak, meant? Xiaochen leaned against a tree and entered deep thought. Heavenly Saber Pavilion, Lingyun Mountain Range, Beichen Peak, in a stone forest. A burly youth with bare arms revealed his well-built body. He was bare-handed as he practiced the 8 moves of the saber technique in the stone forest. Beside him, an old man looked on expressionlessly. He did not have a saber in his hand, but he practiced the 8 moves of the saber technique. Sweep, hack, push, scrape, sweep, chop, chop, and pierce. It was as though he was a treasured saber drawn from its scabbard, radiating a sharp light and revealing a murderous intent. Xiao. He took a step forward and used his palm as a saber. Then, he hacked at a 2-meter-tall rock in front of him. Shwa. There was no rumbling sound. The rock was like tofu, and a corner was shaved off. Xiao. After a few more moves, his palms moved so fast that even their shadows could not be seen. Then, he retracted his palms and gently blew out a gust of wind. The 2-meter-tall boulder immediately scattered and turned into countless tiny stones, swaying as they fell to the ground. When the old man at the side saw all this, he revealed a smile on his expressionless face. He said, "Using your body as a saber, cultivating for 10 years like a day. Now, you have finally stabilized your cultivation at small perfection. Not bad." The expression on the youth's squarish face did not change. There was no joy or sorrow. He was like a block of wood. "Unfortunately, my cultivation realm is too slow. Even at the age of 19 this year, I am only an inferior grade martial grandmaster." Reaching the realm of inferior grade martial grandmaster at the age of 19. In the world below the mountain, such a talent would be considered a genius no matter where he went. However, in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, where geniuses filled the mountain, such talent was very poor. Furthermore, there was the danger of being expelled from the sect. According to the rules of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, if one was not able to reach the realm of inferior grade martial saint by the age of 25, they would be expelled from the inner sect. If one wanted to continue cultivating in the Lingyun mountain range, they would have to pay a certain amount of spirit stones every month. The old man said, "Mu Heng, from the day you chose this path, you should have known which path you chose. You have to endure the loneliness of ordinary people. If you can accomplish something before the age of 30, you should be thankful. The first half of your life is destined to be a nobody." The person called Mu Heng chose a different path from most cultivators. He turned himself into a saber, using his body to prove his Tao. He almost completely gave up on cultivating his essence. Instead, he continuously cultivated the strength of his physical body, polishing himself into a treasured saber with an exceptional sharpness. There were many ways to reach the peak of martial cultivation. Most cultivators chose to prove their Tao by using weapons, or by relying on their fists. They cultivated all sorts of saber techniques, sword techniques, and fist techniques. They used all sorts of cultivation techniques to increase their strength. They relied on their comprehension of weapons and fists to climb to the peak of martial cultivation. There were also a few people who could not condense a martial spirit. They completely gave up on cultivating their essence and did their best to temper their physical body, using their physical body to prove their Tao. As for the path that Mu Heng chose, he used his body to prove his Tao and his weapon to prove his Tao. The path he chose was much more difficult than the other two. However, once he succeeded, his name would shake the world. There was a saying, "If you don't cry, you will shock the world with a single brilliant feat. If you don't fly, you will soar into the sky with a single leap." This was the principle of the Saber Emperor taking this path back then. Mu Heng took out a set of clothes that he had placed on a rock. He said softly to the old man, "Father, I want to participate in the core disciple exam this time." The old man revealed a bewildered expression. "You want to participate in the core disciple exam? With my status as the Beichin Peak's peak master, there is no need for you to participate in the exam. The status of a core disciple is not essential to you." Mu Heng said indifferently, "I just want to prove myself. All these years, I have heard too many rumors. Aren't they all saying that you raised a trash son? I will take the first rank in this exam and show them." The old man smiled faintly and said casually, "There is no need to care about the words of a vile person. You just have to cultivate properly. Your future accomplishments will be so great that the entire Great Qin nation will not be able to contain your footsteps." After the Beichin Peak's peak master spoke, he turned around and left. Mu Heng was somewhat dissatisfied. He called out, "Father, I have to prove my worth. I want to have a big battle to understand my true strength." The old man stopped and entered deep thought. After a while, a voice came out, "Let me think about it." As the date of the annual core disciple exam approached, the atmosphere in the entire Lingyun mountain range became increasingly heavy. The days slowly went by. Soon there were only 3 days left before the exam. Qingyun Peak, dueling grounds. Lu Riyue frowned slightly and asked, "Failed again?" Xiaochen slowly walked out of the ancient absolute saber formation. He smiled bitterly and said, "I managed to touch the edge. However, I am still unable to open the door." For close to half a month, Lu Riyue had used all sorts of methods, trying to forcefully help Xiao Chun comprehend the state of listening to the sword and communicating with it. However, all of them ended in failure. There was no effect at all. The only thing that had any effect was the ancient absolute saber formation. The other state of thunder, that Xiao Chun comprehended, improved significantly. As he continued to comprehend this state of thunder, Xiao Chun vaguely felt that he had touched the edge of listening to the sword and communicating with it. However, he could not be sure. Thus he kept this method to himself. When Lu Ruyue heard this, she was somewhat dispirited. She said, "Since ancient times, I have never heard of someone comprehending listening to the sword and communicating with it with an external force. Maybe I was too optimistic at the start, or maybe I am too useless." When Xiao Chun saw the situation, he quickly consoled her. "Elder sister Ruyue, you have already done enough. Don't say that. Otherwise I will feel bad." When Lu Ruyue heard this, she revealed a bitter smile. She said, "There are still 3 more days to the core disciple exam. Go and prepare. Don't try to comprehend listening to the sword and communicating with it for the next few days. I will make use of this time to think of other methods." When Xiao Chun heard this, he nodded. The day of the core disciple exam was approaching. It was time for him to settle down and summarize what he had learned in the past few days. "Yi Chun, did you fail again?" Lu Suifeng slowly walked over while holding a saber in his hand. Chapter 219. After Lu Suifeng came down from the top of the mountain that day, it was clear that he was working harder than usual. He had not left Qingyan Peak for the past half a month. Lu Ruyue felt that this sudden change was strange. She asked Xiao Chun what was going on. Xiao Chun thought that Lu Suifeng did not want his sister to know about this, so he could only say that he did not know. Xiao Chun nodded helplessly. He thought of something and took out a flowing light flower from his universe ring and handed it to Lu Suifeng. "This is for you. Before the exam, it should be able to help you." Lu Suifeng received the flowing light flower that was glowing with a golden light. He asked suspiciously, "What flower is this? What a dense fragrance." A dense fragrance spread out and immediately attracted Lu Ruyue's attention. When she saw the flowing light flower in Lu Suifeng's hands, she revealed an astonished expression. She walked over and asked in astonishment, "Flowing light flower? Yi Chun, where did you get it?" "Hey, this is not an ordinary flowing light flower. It is a natural treasure close to immortal grade." Lu Ruyue paused for a while. The expression on her face turned from astonishment to shock. She snatched the flowing light flower from Lu Suifeng's hands and handed it to Xiao Chun. "Yi Chun, this flowing light flower is too precious. Suifeng cannot accept it from you." "Flowing light flower?" Lu Suifeng's expression changed. "The legendary flowing light flower that can increase one's comprehension ability, allowing one to be reborn." Xiao Chun waved his hand and took out another flowing light flower. "I obtained this in the fortuitous encounter underground. I have already consumed one. There is no point in continuing to consume it. There is still one left for elder sister Ruyue to break through to Martial King. I will give it to you now as well." Lu Ruyue had never been a pretentious person. After she heard the whole story, she received it and gratefully said to Xiao Chun, "We siblings owe you a favor." Lu Suifeng's expression turned serious. He clenched his right fist and punched Xiao Chun. "Brother, I will remember this favor. With this flowing light flower, I should be able to break through to Martial Saint by the end of the year without any problems. Who knows, I might be able to comprehend something in these 3 days. I might be able to practice the mountain-splitting saber technique to great perfection, and pass the exam to become a core disciple." 3 days later, in the back mountain of Qingyan Peak. Twists and turns. Within the forest, Xiao Chun remained in his original position. He turned around and quickly dashed forward. The saber in his hand drew an arc and a strong shockwave appeared in the surroundings, extending towards the snow-white blade of the lunar shadow saber. The aura on Xiao Chun's body condensed continuously. After a while, a small mountain peak appeared behind Xiao Chun. His aura suddenly rose to the peak, as if he was standing on the peak of the mountain. That's not right. The concept of the twisting road around peak is not like this. Xiao Chun suddenly shook his head in his heart. The twisting road around peak refers to when the situation has reached a dead end, and an unexpected ending suddenly appears. But the concept I'm executing now is simply one that has arrived at a hopeless situation. Instead, its imposing aura is ferocious, and it's advancing triumphantly. In this way, how could there possibly be any room to turn back? Doubts arose in Xiao Chen's heart, and the aura that he had gathered also leaked out. The small mountain behind him also instantly disappeared into nothingness. Xiao Chen sheathed his saber and stood upright. His complexion was somewhat pale. This was the backlash of failing to execute the move. Never mind, it looks like it is not time yet. This is just a core disciple exam. With my strength, even if I did not comprehend the 16th move of the Lingyun saber technique, it is more than enough for me to pass, Xiao Chen said after he adjusted the chaotic essence in his body. Early the next morning, Lu Ruyue and Lu Suifeng had already arrived at Xiao Chen's courtyard. A green bird landed quietly beside the two of them. Let's go. I will not be accompanying you to the core disciple exam. Suifeng already knows the location. I wish you all good luck. Lu Ruyue smiled faintly at Xiao Chen, who had just come out. Xiao Chen nodded, and leaped onto the green bird that Lu Suifeng was riding. The green bird flapped its wings ferociously, creating a huge shockwave as it soared into the sky. It welcomed the rising sun and flew towards the east. As the wind blew past Lu Suifeng's ears, Xiao Chen stood behind him. He could feel that Lu Suifeng's aura was much stronger than it was 3 days ago. He said, "Congratulations, your strength should have increased significantly in these 3 days." Lu Suifeng revealed a satisfied smile. "And it is all thanks to the flowing light flower that you gave me. I have already practiced the mountain-splitting saber technique to small perfection in 3 days. With this earth-ranked saber technique, I am confident that I can become a core disciple this year." Is the core disciple exam very difficult? Why do I feel that the strength of the core disciples is not that great? Xiao Chen asked as he stood behind Lu Suifeng. Lu Suifeng's expression sank. He nodded and said, "It is very difficult. In the entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion, there are less than 5,000 inner disciples. With your strength, it should not be a problem for you to become a core disciple. As for why you have not met any strong core disciples, it is because they are out on experiential training. They will not return to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion until the end of the year." Heavenly Saber Pavilion, Heaven Viewing Platform, on a drill ground. The spectator stands of the drill ground were already filled with inner disciples. These were all here to watch the excitement of the annual core disciple exam. In the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, this was only second to the ranking war at the end of the year. Most people would put down what they were doing on this day. Even if they did not participate in the exam, they would come to watch the excitement. There were 10 elders seated on the tall platform. These were all people from the elders' assembly of the main hall. They were the ones who truly held power in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. The 7 peak masters sat quietly at the side. They all had calm expressions on their faces. However, no one knew what they were thinking in their hearts. Core disciples were a scarce resource in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Even the peak masters of each peak could not directly appoint them. In order to become a core disciple, one had to pass the test set by the main hall. There was a very intuitive way to judge which peak was the strongest. Whichever peak had the most core disciples would be the strongest. Currently, of the 7 peaks of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, the strongest was naturally Tianyue Peak. Of the 500 core disciple slots, Tianyue Peak occupied half of them, more than 200. Aside from Qingyan Peak, which only existed in name, and Jade Maiden Peak, which only had female disciples, the strength of the other 5 peaks was about the same. There was not much of a difference. Song Ke, who was left with only one arm, did not have much color in his eyes. His arm had been chopped off. He had already given up on his ambition to become the pavilion master. Suddenly, he rolled his eyes and looked at the incomparably calm Tianyue Peak's peak master, Lung Tianzheng. He smiled and said, "I'm afraid senior brother Lung will take the top spot in this core disciple exam. I wonder how many Tianyue Peak disciples are participating in the exam this time?" Lung Tianzheng looked at Song Ke and smiled coldly in his heart. He revealed a gentle smile on his face and said indifferently, "About 100, I'm not too sure." When the other peak masters heard this, their expressions changed slightly. There were only 50 slots for the core disciple exam every year. Unless there were exceptional talents, there would not be any more slots. The inner disciples who wanted to participate in the exam had to become a superior grade martial grand master before the age of 19. The other peaks had at most 20-odd disciples who could meet this requirement. Compared to the number of Tianhua Peak, they were not worth mentioning. If they were to compete, they would not be able to win. It seemed that Tianhua Peak would take at least half of the core disciple slots this time. The stipend and treatment that a core disciple received was more than twice that of an ordinary inner disciple. Their cultivation speed was also much faster. If all the slots were taken by Tianhua Peak, then for a long time in the future, the strength of their peaks would not be able to surpass Tianhua Peak. They could only be suppressed. Thinking of this, the peak masters of the other peaks exchanged glances. They could see a helpless expression in each other's eyes. A cold look flashed in Song Kei's eyes. He casually glanced at Lu Ruyue and said, "However, I'm afraid no one from senior brother Lung's Tianhua Peak will be able to obtain the first rank." The Wanren Peak's peak master, Wan Feng, asked in confusion, "Why? The first rank for the past few years seems to be from Tianhua Peak." Song Kei looked coldly at Lu Ruyue and smiled. "It looks like junior brother Wan is not aware of some things. Your peak's core disciple, Yang Qi, was already defeated by Peak Master Lu's new disciple in the Hall of Contributions. Furthermore, he did not even use 100 moves. There is also that quick saber Lin Feng. He is even more laughable. He was defeated with one punch." Wan Feng revealed a suspicious expression. He had been in closed-door cultivation all year round. If it were not for the core disciple exam being an important matter, he would not have come out. Hence, he did not understand what was going on in the mountains. Wan Feng tilted his head slightly and asked an elder of Wanren Peak behind him, "Elder Su, is there such a thing?" Elder Su's expression was somewhat unsightly. However, he still told Wan Feng everything he knew in full detail. After he heard everything, Wan Feng's expression turned sullen. He looked at Lu Ruyue and said, "I have not come out for some time. I did not expect Qinyan Peak to have a successor." Lu Ruyue was expressionless. She knew that Song Kei was trying to sow discord. She looked at Song Kei coldly and said indifferently, "You only have one hand left, yet you are still so vicious. Be careful of biting your tongue." Just as Song Kei was about to say something, Lung Tianzheng looked at him in disgust. "Junior brother Song, it is best that you worry about your own matters. Don't bother with other people's matters." At this moment, the Jade Maiden Peak's peak master, who had been silent all this while, said, "Senior brother Song, there is no need to be so decisive. Yang Qi's strength is not considered top-notch among the core disciples. It is not a big deal for him to be defeated by an inner disciple. Such things happen every year in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Furthermore, the process of how he defeated Lin Feng with one punch is worth discussing. There is no need to be too shocked. The most important thing is that I heard that a new disciple appeared in Tianhua Peak recently. He managed to practice the Lingyun Saber technique to great perfection, which no one in the past 100 years has managed to practice to great perfection. He actually practiced the Lingyun Saber technique to great perfection." When the others heard this, they all revealed shocked expressions. This was equivalent to a peak earth-ranked saber technique. If he could practice it to great perfection, no one in the same cultivation realm would be his match. Chapter 220. Lung Tianzheng smiled faintly and looked meaningfully at the Beichen Peak's lord, who was like a block of wood. He said, "Junior sister Chu's news is as fast as ever. However, the core disciple competition this time is more exciting than before. You'll know once you continue watching. Whether Zhang Lai will be able to take first place is still unknown." Everyone did not understand what Lung Tianzheng meant. Could it be that with a peak earth-rank saber technique, he would not be able to obtain the first rank? A black warship slowly flew over from the horizon. With a so sound, it landed on the drill grounds. "The people from Tianhua Peak are here." Indeed, Tianhua Peak is still as strong as before. There are actually more than 100 inner disciples participating in the exam. Looks like the first rank will be taken away by Tianhua Peak again. There is another warship flying over from that direction. The people from Beichen Peak are coming. The people from Jade Maiden Peak are here as well. There are so many female disciples. Soon, aside from Qingyun Peak's Xiaochun and Lu Suifeng, the disciples of the other 5 peaks all disembarked on their warships. They stood at the side and formed 5 formations. Of the 5 formations, Tianhua Peak had the most people. These Tianhua Peak inner disciples looked at the disciples of the other peaks with arrogance on their faces. They seemed very pleased with themselves, as though the core disciple exam was already in their bag. Zhang Lai, who was in the crowd, had a calm expression on his face. He swept his gaze across all the participants of the inner disciple exam, observing the situation of his competitors. With one glance, most of these people were early inferior grade martial grandmasters. A small portion of them were middle inferior grade martial grandmasters. Only a few of them were peak martial grandmasters. These people were worthy of his attention. However, when cultivators were of the same cultivation realm, they would compete on martial techniques and actual combat experience. Zhang Lai's combat experience was already very plentiful even before he ascended the mountain. In the vicinity of Yunyang City, if not 100 cultivators had died at his hands, there were at least dozens. In the battles between the big clans in the city, Zhang Lai often fought on the front lines. In terms of combat experience, he definitely had more than these Heavenly Saber Pavilion inner disciples. He had a clear advantage. If it was a competition of martial techniques, his advantage was even more obvious. The Lingyun saber technique was originally a top-notch earth-tier saber technique. However, because it was difficult to learn and lacked 3 moves, it was demoted to an earth-tier saber technique. Now that he had cultivated it to the greater mastery stage, and had even comprehended the 16th move, he had an overwhelming advantage over these people. Seems like there's no pressure on me to get first place this time, Zhang Lai thought to himself. But at this moment he felt a blazing gaze, as sharp as the edge of a blade, piercing through the air and shooting towards him. Zhang Lai looked in the direction of that gaze, and saw an ordinary-looking cultivator. When he used his perception to check, he could not help but be astonished. How could a person with such an intense gaze only be an inferior grade martial grandmaster? How could an inferior grade martial grandmaster appear in the core disciple exam? Zhang Lai thought suspiciously in his heart. At this moment of doubt, when he raised his head to look for the owner of the Dao gaze, he could not find him. Mu Heng, who was in the crowd, withdrew his gaze and smiled faintly. His aura was completely gone. His squarish, ordinary face was no different from a passerby in the crowd. It was very ordinary, without any fluctuations. That gaze seemed to have never appeared at all. Zhang Lai looked around, trying to find the owner of that gaze. The gaze came from the Beichen Peak disciples. There was a total of 20 Beichen Peak disciples participating in the core disciple exam. Logically speaking, if he had seen that person before, he should have been able to find that person among these 20 people easily with his memory. However, the current situation was very strange. He counted the 20 people one by one, but he could not find the Beichen Peak disciple, who was only an inferior grade martial grand master. Could I be hallucinating? After a long time, Zhang Lai could not help but suspect that it was his own doing. His emotions became restless for a moment. Junior brother Zhang, are you all right? When a Tianhua Peak senior brother saw that Zhang Lai was distracted, he asked out of goodwill. Don't lose your composure before the big battle. Zhang Lai recovered his wits and thought to himself, I was indeed overly concerned. Who cares what gaze it is? When the time comes, we will meet again. I just have to keep an eye on it. Thank you, senior brother. That's right, senior brother Wu Bing, you have participated in the core disciple exam before. Can you tell me how the exam will be conducted later? Zhang Lai cupped his hands in thanks and changed the topic. Although Zhang Lai was a newly promoted inner disciple of Tianhua Peak, his talent and strength were not to be underestimated. His future would be limitless. Wu Bing had interjected because he wanted to befriend Zhang Lai. When he heard the question, he immediately told him what he knew. The core disciple exam is split into the foundational stage and the arena battles. The foundational stage is different every year, so I do not know what will be tested in the foundational stage. The arena battles have not changed every year. The cultivators who pass the foundational stage will fight against each other, leaving only the top 50 inner disciples. I heard that the sect will reward the top 10 inner disciples. In the end, there is one more battle. It is between the last 50 inner disciples. Everyone has to choose a person to fight against. If they lose, they will lose their core disciple status. Zhonglai nodded. So that's how it is. I wonder what will be tested in the foundational stage this year. For some reason, the chief examiner sent by the main hall had not come down yet. The group of people had been standing under the scorching sun for a long time. Gradually, they started to get impatient. What's going on? Why isn't it starting yet? The sun is making me dizzy. Haha, I am fine. I cultivate a fire-attributed cultivation technique. The longer I stay under the sun, the more boring it is to wait. What exactly is going on? Do you guys know? Not everyone is here yet. If not, the chief examiner will not come. Who is so troublesome? He is putting on airs. He actually wants so many of us to wait for him. It seems like the people from Qingyan Peak are not here yet. I heard that Qingyan Peak recently accepted a very powerful inner disciple. He defeated Quicksaber Lin Feng in one move. Is that true? Lin Feng's strength is within the top 10 of all the core disciples. As the group of people spoke, a black dot appeared in the eastern sky. The black dot slowly grew larger. When everyone saw it clearly, they discovered that it was a huge green bird. Lu Suifeng was very bad at piloting the green bird. Xiaochen was not prepared at all. After he flew for a long time, he realized that he was flying in the wrong direction. Lu Suifeng looked at the drill grounds on the ground and wiped the sweat off his forehead. He smiled. Brother Yi, we are definitely right this time. Look at the expressions of the people on the ground when they look at us. You can see how excited they are. Yi Chen extended out his spiritual sense and immediately heard what the group of people on the ground said. He was speechless. They are very excited. However, they are very excited when they scold us. Xiao. The green bird flapped its wings and slowly landed on the flat ground of the drill grounds. Xiao Chun and Lu Suifeng immediately jumped down. The two of them were rather thick-skinned. They ignored the gazes of the crowd. Bang! 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 Not long after Xiao Chun and Lu Suifeng landed, 3 gray-robed old men jumped down from a tall platform in the distance. They created 3 shockwaves in the air and glided for a few hundred meters before landing firmly on the ground. A middle-aged man with a square face walked out from the 3 of them. He was a peak martial saint and had a flourishing aura. The light in his eyes was withdrawn as he swept his gaze across the crowd. Everyone felt a slight pressure. I am your chief examiner. This year's exam is the same as the previous years. It will be split into the foundational stage and the arena battles. The middle-aged man with a square face said in a deep voice. His voice was very loud. Everyone could hear him clearly. Dang! Dang dang! The chief examiner waved his hand, and the 2 people beside him took out black rocks that were as tall as a person from their spatial rings. Soon, a stone forest appeared in the drill grounds. There were no patterns on the surface of the rocks. It gave off a calm and grand atmosphere. The first stage will test your strength. You need to use your saber to break apart one of these rocks. Remember, you only have one chance. If you fail, you will be eliminated, the chief examiner said expressionlessly to the crowd. After that, the 2 deputy examiners at the side started to hand out numbers to the rest of the people. They lined up according to the order of their numbers and began the exam. Xiaochen received his number and looked at it. Number 240. It was one of the last numbers. In the entire drill grounds, there were only about 300 people participating in the exam. After the number was handed out, the person from Tianyue Peak slowly walked into the stone forest. He looked at the black rocks that were as tall as a person and did not pay much attention to them. After a martial Grand Master condensed a saber light and struck with all their might, they could shatter the rocks into countless pieces. Furthermore, this was without using a martial technique. If they used a martial technique, the might would be even greater. Xiaochen drew his saber and spots of red light gathered on the saber. This person cultivated a fire-attributed cultivation technique. Fire-attributed cultivation techniques were known for their ferocious might. There should not be any problems. Shatter for me. This Tianyue Peak disciple shouted loudly and leaped into the air. The saber light descended from the sky, looking very imposing. However, when the saber light landed on the black rocks, it gave off a kung-chong sound. There was not even a crack on the rock. How could it be like this? When the saber light dissipated, this person looked at the black rocks that did not have any marks on them. His eyes were filled with confusion. The chief examiner struck out with his palm, and the rock that was as hard as iron was shattered into countless pieces. He said indifferently, "Number 1 failed, step down." "No, I cannot step down. I am already 19 this year. If I fail again, I will never have another chance. Please give me another chance. I did not use a martial technique. If I used a martial technique, I would definitely be able to do it." This person pleaded anxiously to the chief examiner. The chief examiner waved his hand, and a shockwave surged out. This person was immediately thrown into the air by a huge force and landed outside the drill grounds. I said it very clearly, everyone only has one chance. I do not wish to repeat myself, so I will tell everyone else. Wuxia. Suddenly, a black dart was shot out from the high platform of the drill grounds. The chief examiner gently caught the dart and removed the note on it. After a while he said, "I just received the rules. The first stage does not allow the use of martial techniques. If you do, you will be disqualified as well." Chapter 221. The moment the news came out, the drill grounds burst into an uproar. Everyone present already knew that this black rock was not an ordinary rock. It was not simple. It was several times harder than ordinary rocks. Their hearts were already beating like drums. When they heard that they were not allowed to use martial techniques, they found it unbelievable. Not only did the inner disciples find it unbelievable, even the 2 vice examiners beside the chief examiner had shocked expressions on their faces. They were very clear on the origins of the black rock. Even the 2 of them would have to use a quarter of their strength to chop it in half. The chief examiner's face turned black as he said sullenly, "Silence, continue the test. If you continue to make a ruckus, I will use my own method to silence you." Although there were still people who were dissatisfied, under the might of the chief examiner, no one dared to say anything. Candidate number 2 walked out with a grave expression. This person was rather smart. After he walked around the black rock, he asked the chief examiner, "May I touch this rock?" The chief examiner nodded. "Yes, but you cannot use your essence to cheat. Do not take too long either." This person quickly touched the surface of the rock. He was clearly very cautious. After a while he withdrew his hand and slowly drew his saber. Dang! Without any hesitation, he decisively gathered his chi and made his move in one breath. There was no hesitation at all. With a schwa sound, the saber broke through the top of the rock and sliced downwards continuously. A joyful expression appeared on this person's face. He could not help but increase the force in his hand. Ka-ka! When the saber was a quarter of the way to the bottom of the rock, it suddenly got stuck. No matter how much force this person used, the saber could not move forward nor could it be pulled out. It was completely stuck. Bang! The chief examiner sent out another palm strike. The palm strike flew through the air, creating a sonic boom in the air. The black boulder that was as tall as a person suddenly shattered into pieces. The saber in that person's hand loosened. He could not withstand the inertia and was forced back a few steps before he could stabilize himself. Candidate number 2, you do not pass. Candidate number 3, continue. The chief examiner said unhurriedly while that person had an expression of dissatisfaction on his face. It was indeed a pity that he was so close to splitting the black boulder in half. Unfortunately, he was so close that he did not succeed in the end. Xiaochen watched the examinee number 2 leave dejectedly. His expression turned grave as well. Why is this test so strict? That person is a middle-stage superior grade martial grandmaster. If they were unable to use their martial skills, most of the people present would probably face the same fate, being eliminated in the first round. Xiaochun turned his gaze to the high platform. There was an old man sitting in the middle of the platform. He looked senile, but his blood and qi were soaring. Even from a distance, one could feel his strong and long life aura. This person was the first elder of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's main hall's Elders' Assembly. Jiangqi. He held the highest position in the entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion. He was the one who threw the dart earlier. Xiaochun had a suspicious look in his eyes. What is this old man thinking? The first stage is already so difficult. Are you trying to eliminate all of us? What is the first elder thinking? Why did he suddenly increase the difficulty by so much? The Wanren Peak's Peak Master asked suspiciously from the other side of the high platform. If this goes on, I'm afraid it will be a problem if we can even select 10 core disciples. What exactly happened? Senior Brother Lung, you have the best relationship with the first elder. Do you know any inside information? The core disciple exam this time was indeed strange. Even the Peak Masters did not know such a change would occur. Lung Tianyue frowned slightly and glanced at the first elder Jiangqi. He muttered to himself. Could it be because of that? Looks like I have to make some preparations after the exam ends. When the Jade Maiden Peak's Peak Master, Chu Shangyun, saw Lung Tianyue muttering to himself, she said, Senior Brother Lung, do you really know any inside information? Tell us about it. Lung Tianyue smiled embarrassedly and shook his head. Don't overthink it. What inside information could I possibly know? Let's just continue watching. Clearly, the crowd did not believe his words. However, since Lung Tianyue did not want to say it, they could not force him. Everyone was of the same status. They could not force him. Lu Ruyue's pretty face was filled with doubt. She was not sure what had happened. She looked into the distance and saw Xiaochun on the drill grounds. She muttered to herself, I hope nothing bad happened. The blazing sun hung high in the sky. Occasionally, there would be dispirited sounds coming from the drill grounds. The first stage of the exam had already been going on for a while. However, only 10 people had passed. Furthermore, these 10 people were peak superior grade martial grand masters. Their foundations were very solid. They were able to split the black rock in half in one breath. Number 100, Tianyue Peak's Zhang Lai. The chief examiner read out loudly. It's Zhang Lai. Zhang Lai is coming out. I have long heard of this person's name. Recently he has been rising very quickly in Tianyue Peak. I heard he is the son of the clan head of the top clan in Yunyang City, the Zhang clan. He has a good family background and high talent. As long as such a person is willing to work hard, he will definitely become strong. He is already a strong person. Tianyue Peak holds a competition every month. Among the ordinary inner disciples, no one in Tianyue Peak is a match for him. To be able to obtain the first rank among the inner disciples of the strongest faction in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, he is basically guaranteed to be the first rank in this exam. Haha, it is too early to say this. Let's wait for him to pass this stage first. If he cannot even pass this stage, he will not even be able to obtain the qualifications to be a core disciple. The moment Zhang Lai appeared, he immediately attracted everyone's attention. The ordinary inner disciples in the spectator stands all started discussing him. In a distant spectator stand, a group of Heavenly Saber Pavilion disciples with 3 golden lines on their sleeves also paid attention and looked at the drill grounds. These core disciples were the last 50 core disciples. After Zhang Lai and the others completed the 3 stages, they would have to choose their opponents and fight to determine their core disciple status. Zhang Lai, I hope I do not meet with this person later. A Beichen Peak core disciple said worriedly as he looked at Zhang Lai. Another core disciple added, it would be great if he could not pass the foundational stage. That way, we would be completely at ease. The 50 core disciples all had some uneasiness on their faces. After all, after enjoying the superior treatment of a core disciple, if they were to return to being an ordinary inner disciple, they would not be able to accept such a huge difference in their hearts. Only one person had a calm expression, resting with his eyes closed. He held a saber in his hands and hugged it in front of his chest. He did not pay any attention to the sounds around him. It was as though everything had nothing to do with him. He was incomparably indifferent. Zhang Lai slowly walked to a black rock. He withdrew his aura and did not release it. His gaze was incomparably calm. After a while, his aura suddenly became sharp. A bright light flashed in his eyes. It was like a sharp saber being unsheathed, showing off its sharpness. Kasie. A black boulder standing in front of Zhang Lai suddenly shattered, turning into countless stone fragments that flew everywhere in the air. Zhang Lai waved his hand and sent out a palm wind. An intense chi whirlwind appeared in front of him. The stone shards flying at him fell to the ground and scattered. What's going on? Why did the rock shatter? The surrounding examinees all thought in astonishment. They did not even see when Zhang Lai made his move. Xiao Chen's eyes were filled with astonishment as well. What's going on? He was 100% sure that Zhang Lai did not draw his saber, but the hard rock shattered just like that. Saber intent. These two words suddenly appeared in Xiao Chen's mind. This was definitely a state of the saber. Furthermore, Zhang Lai had comprehended this saber intent to small perfection. Congratulations, Senior Brother Lung. You have accepted another good disciple. He actually managed to comprehend his own saber intent at such a young age. His future is limitless. Tianyue Peak is really full of talents. How enviable. Small perfection saber intent. It seems like the Heavenly Saber Pavilion has not had such a genius in the past few hundred years. Lung Tianyue smiled faintly as he replied to the other peak masters. However, he was very surprised in his heart. He knew that Zhang Lai had comprehended saber intent. Originally, Lung Tianyue thought that Zhang Lai would use it as a trump card. He did not expect Zhang Lai to use it right from the start. Why? Given Zhang Lai's character, he would not be so ostentatious. On the drill grounds, Zhang Lai suddenly turned his head back. A bright light shone in his eyes. He had finally caught the sharp gaze from earlier. What he saw was an extremely ordinary squarish face. Mu Heng revealed a slightly astonished expression. After a while, he smiled at Zhang Lai in relief. Then he withdrew his gaze and turned back into an unremarkable passerby. Zhang Lai imprinted Mu Heng's appearance in his heart. He thought to himself, I finally found you. I did not expose my trump card in vain. You put pressure on me. I can do the same to you. Chopping the hard black rock in half without using a martial technique was not difficult for Zhang Lai. However, before he went up, he remembered the sharp gaze that tore through the air. Although he told himself to forget about this gaze, no matter how much he tried to comfort himself, this gaze had already left a mark in his heart. If he didn't resolve it perfectly, he would never be able to. If he did not deal with it perfectly, he might leave behind a heart demon during a fight. Thus, Zhang Lai chose to reveal his trump card. He calculated that the other party's gaze would leak out unintentionally. The development of the matter was exactly as Zhang Lai expected. Number 2, Zhang Lai passed the test. Next, the test continued, and the number of people who failed increased. The number of people who failed in the first stage far surpassed the previous ones. This was something that everyone did not expect. By the time number 200 was reported, there were actually 60 people who successfully chopped the rock in half. The high elimination rate caused everyone to be flabbergasted. Number 220, Beichen Peak's Mu Heng. The chief examiner continued to read. Mu Heng passed through the crowd and slowly walked out. He was like an unremarkable little blade of grass. Initially, no one noticed him. Now that he walked forward, everyone's gazes were focused on him. Chapter 222. What's going on? This person is actually only an inferior grade martial grand master. Very quickly, someone sensed his cultivation realm, and could not help but exclaim. The most basic requirement of the core disciple exam was that inner disciples had to be a superior grade martial grandmaster before the age of 19. Many inner disciples were stuck at this threshold. When they saw that Mu Heng was only an inferior grade martial grandmaster, they all started to doubt him. The chief examiner was expressionless as he looked at the restless crowd. Under the blazing sun, when the crowd felt his gaze, they felt a chill run down their spines. If you have any doubts, please seek an explanation from the elders' assembly after the exam is over. Whoever is making a ruckus, scram immediately. Mu Heng's ordinary face did not change because of the words of the others. He walked straight to a rock and took a deep breath. Xiao. Mu Heng raised his right hand and used it as a saber. He tilted his body slightly and chopped down. The air was like a curtain of water as it was split by Mu Heng's palm. The black rock was slowly sliced in half. Mu Heng's movements were very slow. It was a stark contrast to Zhang Lai's ferocious saber intent. Everyone could see it clearly and were dumbfounded. The mysterious black rock that even a superior-grade martial grandmaster would find hard to cut with their full strength was actually easily sliced in half by an inferior-grade martial grandmaster. This was out of everyone's expectations. The people who were originally critical of Mu Heng's participation in the core disciple exam were now completely speechless. All that was left in their hearts was shock. Mu Heng withdrew his hand, and a small crack appeared in the middle of the black rock. If one did not look carefully, they would not be able to discover that the rock had already been split in half. Bang! The chief examiner sent out another palm strike and shattered the rock. He said, "Number 220 Baichen Peaks Mu Heng pass." Mu Heng looked at Zhang Lai's gaze and smiled faintly before walking out. Xiaochen looked at Mu Heng's back and entered deep thought. This was the first time he saw someone cultivate the physical body to such a strong level. Mu Heng's strength might not be as strong as Xiaochen's, but his ability to use the strength of his physical body was much stronger than Xiaochen's. If it was Xiaochen, he would have no problem shattering this black rock with a full power strike of 6,000 kilograms. However, it was impossible to do what Mu Heng did, to control his strength to a point like a blade, like a thin stream or a cloud. It's fine. There are all sorts of ways to cultivate the physical body, just like martial techniques. I was just making a fuss over nothing, Xiaochen smiled faintly. After he thought it through, he thought to himself. Number 240, Qingyun Peaks Yichun. After a long time, it was finally Xiaochen's turn. Lu Suifeng's number was 280th, even further behind Xiaochen's. When he heard Xiaochen's name, he said encouragingly, "Brother Yi, do your best." When Lu Suifeng heard Xiaochen's name, he could no longer hold back the hatred in his eyes. He stared at Xiaochen, wishing he could jump down and slap this person to death. When Song Ke saw Xiaochen, he could no longer hold back the hatred hidden in his eyes. He stared at Xiaochen, wishing he could jump down and slap this person to death. Ever since Song Ke met Xiaochen for the first time, his originally happy life had slowly turned into a tragedy. Originally, he was only one step away from becoming one of the youngest martial monarchs in the history of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Now, not only did he have hopes of advancing to martial monarch, but because of his heart demon, he lost all hope of advancing. Furthermore, he lost an arm and his strength decreased significantly. He became a laughing stock. If it were not for the few big shots of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion protecting Xiaochen, he would have found an opportunity to kill Xiaochen long ago. How hateful. A minor character actually has so many connections. Song Ke clenched his remaining hand tightly as he thought to himself hatefully. Song Ke turned his head and looked at the calm Lu Ruyue. He said in a gloomy voice, "Peak Master Lu, your disciple is coming out. I wonder if his performance will surpass Zhang Lai's. There should be a pleasant surprise." Lu Ruyue smiled casually and turned her head. "No matter how great a pleasant surprise there is, it will not be as great as the one you lost an arm." Song Ke's expression changed. He immediately suppressed his anger and said, "That brat better not have any weakness in my hands. Otherwise, I will make him suffer a fate worse than death." Lu Ruyue smiled faintly. "I do not know if my disciple will suffer a fate worse than death. However, I know that you will suffer a fate worse than death. Isn't that right, old bastard?" At the end, the smile on Lu Ruyue's face vanished. She cursed fiercely. She could not stand Song Ke's endless mockery. Bang! "Girl, who are you calling an old bastard?" Song Ke smacked the table and glared at her. Lu Ruyue did not show any fear. Her pretty face was covered in frost. "I'm just calling you an old bastard. So what? Do you want to fight? I don't mind teaching you some principles." Lu Ruyue's talent was startling in the first place. After she completely absorbed the essence of heaven and earth that Ao Jiao gave her, she consumed the flowing light flower. Now her strength was infinitely close to that of a martial king. She was not afraid of the one-armed Song Quebec. "The two of you, stop quarreling. Fighting in front of the elders' assembly is not good for either of you." The other peak masters quickly advised when they saw the tension between the two of them getting stronger. Lung Tianzheng looked at Song Ke and said, "Junior brother Song, you are already so old. Don't fight with the younger generation. Be more magnanimous. If you lost an arm, let's see if you would say that." Song Ke was so angry that he trembled. However, he did not dare to flare up in front of Lung Tianzheng. He did not have the guts to do so. Under the persuasion of the crowd, the commotion in the spectator stands slowly calmed down. Inside and outside the drill grounds, the ordinary inner disciples in the spectator stands, and the inner disciples doing the introductions were all staring at Xiao Chun. In terms of fame, Xiao Chun had the most legends in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion recently. In the few months since he arrived at the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, he first played around with the Peak Martial King of Biyun Peak, Song Quebec. Then he injured many Wanren Peak inner disciples in the Hall of Contributions, and even defeated the core disciple, Yang Qi. After that, he disappeared for a period of time. However, after he reappeared, he became even more famous. He miraculously completed a high-level mission of the sect, and obtained an excellent evaluation. His ranking soared by 500 ranks. The second-ranked core disciple of Wanren Peak, Lin Feng, wanted to take revenge. However, he was defeated with one punch and became a laughingstock. All the things that happened were unimaginable. No one dared to believe that Xiao Chun was only a martial grandmaster. There was another rumor saying that every time Xiao Chun made a move, he would use some tricks and go against the morals of a cultivator. Compared to the first rumor, the crowd believed the latter rumor more. Now that they had the opportunity to witness Xiao Chun make a move in public, they could verify the truth of the rumor. Zhang Lai and Mu Heng, who had already passed the test, looked at Xiao Chun with curiosity. Even though they were cultivating in the mountains, they had heard some rumors about Xiao Chun. However, the two of them were proud and arrogant people. They did not believe the rumors. This was especially so for Zhang Lai. He even snorted disdainfully. "I will let you know that snatching your spot back then was a matter of course. Only the truly strong can receive the best treatment. This is an unchanging principle since ancient times." Zhang Lai grasped the saber in his hand tightly. There was a bright light in his eyes as he stared at Xiao Chun in the drill grounds. Xiao Chun's eyes were like a mirror. His heart was as calm as still water. His mind was very clear. The surrounding gazes and discussions did not affect him at all. There was only one chance, and he could not use martial techniques. Xiao Chun did not dare to be careless. He carefully scanned the black rock with his spiritual sense. He discovered that the surface of this rock was extremely smooth. It was even harder than steel. However, that was not a problem. 50% of his strength should be enough. Feeling confident, Xiao Chun drew his saber decisively. He withdrew his saber light and sent out a saber light. Xiao. The sharp saber light flashed in the air. With a huangdang sound, Xiao Chun sheathed his saber. There were no changes to the surface of the black rock, which was surprising. Ha 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 ha. I was wondering how powerful it was. It turns out that it is only SOSO. What a pleasant surprise. Song Ke's eyes were like lightning as he stared at the black rock. Originally, he thought that this would not be a problem for Xiao Chun. However, when he took a closer look, he discovered that there were no changes to the surface of the rock. It looked like even horses stumble. This brat was too careless. It was such a good opportunity to mock him. Without even thinking, Song Ke started laughing loudly. Hua. The moment Song Ke spoke, there was a crisp cassier sound as though it was responding to Song Quebec. The black rock split into two halves. The intense energy was like a hurricane. It tossed the two pieces of rock into the air. After they flew for a long time, they landed heavily on the ground. Number 240, Qingyun Peak Xiao Chun passed. After the rock landed, the chief examiner's voice rang out. Song Ke's face alternated between green and red. He did not know where to put his face. He felt that he was slowly turning from a laughingstock to a joke. This time, Lu Ruyue could not even be bothered to add insult to injury. She directly ignored Song Quebec. It turned out that Xiao Chun used the technique of drawing the saber in this attack. He did not have a martial spirit, so the speed at which he gathered essence was at least 50% faster than other cultivators. With a thought, The spinning chi whirlpool in his dantian immediately emitted a huge amount of essence and gathered it on the saber. With such a fast speed at which essence was gathered, in addition to the technique of drawing the saber, the speed of this attack was very fast. After all, Song Ke was quite far from the drill grounds. Furthermore, he was feeling uneasy. Even if he was a martial king, he would not be surprised to make a mistake in such a situation. Xiaochen raised his head slightly. He felt a concerned gaze from the tall platform. He smiled at Lu Ruyue, who was in the distance, and walked into the crowd of inner disciples who had already passed the test. The test on the drill grounds continued. There were people who passed the test one after another. Of course, there were even more people who failed. Soon, it was Lu Suifeng's turn. When Lu Ruyue saw Lu Suifeng slowly walk out of the crowd, she felt conflicted again. Lu Suifeng was already 19 years old. If he did not pass the test, he would not have any more chances. She only had this one younger brother. She did not want to see him fail. Chapter 223. Lu Suifeng smiled faintly at Lu Ruyue and nodded at Xiaochen. Then he quietly looked at the black rock in front of him. After consuming the flowing light flower that Xiaochen gave him, Lu Suifeng's martial techniques and cultivation techniques had improved very quickly. He had already stabilized his cultivation as a peak superior grade martial grand master. As long as he did not make any mistakes, it should not be a problem for him to pass this stage. Open! Lu Suifeng shouted and drew the small saber at his waist. The saber gave off a blazing light as it hacked violently on the hard black rock. Z. The saber cut into the rock and slid down continuously. Lu Suifeng had already succeeded halfway. However, the expression on his face did not relax at all. There were many inner disciples who had their sabers stuck in the middle of the rock after they cut it, resulting in them failing the test. The image of Wang Rong's mocking face flashed in Lu Suifeng's mind. He increased the force in his hand. With a schwa sound, he quickly split the rock in half. Qingyan Peak's Lu Suifeng test successful. Lu Suifeng wiped the sweat off his forehead and walked over to Xiaochen. He bumped fists with him and said joyfully, "I succeeded." "Congratulations," Xiaochen said sincerely. Lu Suifeng withdrew his smile. "I cannot congratulate you now. There are still 2 more stages to pass. Continue to work hard. Don't be happy too early. Even if you pass the foundational stage, I will chase the 2 of you down in the arena battles." Zhang Lai suddenly walked over and stared at Xiaochen. "Especially you. As long as I am in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, you can forget about becoming a core disciple." The current Zhang Lai could be said to be flushed with success in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. His future was boundless. The only thing he could not let go of was the matter of him entering Tianyue Peak through the back door. As long as he completely defeated Xiaochen and proved his worth, he would be able to get rid of this worry in his heart. Originally, Xiaochen did not have much of an impression of Zhang Lai. However, when he heard others mention Zhang Lai's identity, he immediately recalled the matter of the Zhang clan cultivators plotting against him in Evil Wind Valley. Repay kindness with kindness and take revenge with hatred. This had always been Xiaochen's principle. No matter how the Zhang clan treated him, Xiaochen would repay it sooner or later. It was just that he had been cultivating in Qingyan Peak, and did not have the time to care about this matter. Now that Zhang Lai had delivered himself to him, Xiaochen had no reason to let him off. He smiled faintly and said, "That is what I told you as well. Let's wait and see." Zhang Lai coldly snorted and left. After a while, the first round of the core disciple exam was finally over. The chief examiner counted the number of people, and counted them carefully. Out of the 300 inner disciples, only 100 were left. The first stage of the examination had eliminated 2/3 of the people. Just thinking about it made people feel terrified. After counting the number of people, the chief examiner brought everyone to the other side of the drill ground. After they stopped, they saw a piece of land that was more than 800 meters long. It was covered with a thick layer of black cloth. It was impossible to see what was underneath the black cloth. Hua! 2 deputy examiners rushed forward and quickly removed the black cloth. Instantly, a square formation filled with spear blades appeared before everyone's eyes. The sharp spear blades faced the blazing sun and flickered with a bright light. When one looked at it, it caused their scalp to go numb. A small portion of the 2-meter-long spear blades were inserted into the ground. The 20-centimeter-long rhombus-shaped spear head flickered with a cold light under the blazing sun. It was incomparably sharp. The distance between the spears was rather wide, about 1.5 meters. The square formation formed by tens of thousands of spears was about 1,000 meters long and 400 meters wide. The chief examiner looked at the people who passed the first stage and said, "The second stage tests movement techniques. If you can last for 2 hours on this spear formation, you will pass." The moment the chief examiner finished speaking, the expressions of the 100-odd people immediately changed. Some were happy and some were worried. Those who normally focused on movement techniques or cultivated high-ranked movement techniques had expressions of joy on their faces. Those inner disciples who focused on other aspects had unsightly expressions. To be able to enter the inner sect of Heavenly Saber Pavilion, their movement techniques were naturally not weak. However, if they did not spend a lot of time on their movement techniques, they would feel uneasy if they wanted to last for an hour on the sharp spear blades. Last for an hour? "I'm afraid it is not that simple," Xiaochen muttered to himself as he looked at the huge formation. If they only wanted to last for an hour, the range of the spear formation would not be so large. Furthermore, although it was difficult to last for an hour, if there were no external interference, he believed that most of the people present would be able to pass this test. Pooh, pooh, pooh. Footsteps could be heard. 10 white-robed Jade Maiden Peak elders walked over quickly. After that, they split into groups of 3 and stood at the 4 corners of the formation. When the chief examiner saw this group of people, he said, "After you land, you lose. Aside from that, there are no other rules. The time starts now." So. Figures flashed and everyone quickly jumped up. Xiaochen leaped up gently and found a foothold. He executed the blue dragon cloud soaring art and spun around like a flood dragon before landing firmly. Pooh! There was a miserable cry. Because an inner disciple did not control his strength well, the sharp spear blade pierced through his shoes. He lost his footing and immediately fell down. The Jade Maiden Peak elders guarding at the side immediately flew over to where this person landed. They brought him out of the formation and took off his shoes and socks to treat his wounds. The sudden situation gave everyone a better understanding of the sharpness of the spear blades. They could not help but become even more cautious. Lu Suifeng leaped up gently and landed beside Xiaochen. He said in a low voice, "Yi Chen, why do I feel that something is wrong? This formation is too big. I know those Jade Maiden Peak elders. They have a very high position in Jade Maiden Peak. Furthermore, they all cultivate healing martial techniques and cultivation techniques." Xiaochen's expression did not change. He was on high alert as he said in a deep voice, "Just adapt to the situation. This second test will definitely not be so simple." Xiaochen was thinking further ahead. The chief examiner's last sentence also caught his attention. Did the so-called no rules mean that he could attack others as he pleased while standing on the formation? Although he did not have such a strong heart to attack, he still had to be wary of others. He had to keep an eye out. Standing on the sharp spear blades, aside from testing the strength of a cultivator's movement technique, it also required a strong mental fortitude. Otherwise, it would be very easy to lose one's footing. Just standing on the sharp spear blades alone was already difficult. If one could not maintain their balance and jumped around, the spear blades would quickly injure their ankles and cause them to fall to the ground. Thus, one could not lose their footing. If there was an unstable situation, one could not jump onto the other spear blades. One had to calm down first and stabilize one's footing. The blazing sun hung high in the sky and the harsh sunlight mercilessly shone on everyone. There was not even a slight breeze in the huge drill grounds. It was very frustrating. A few inner disciples lost their footing due to their frustration. They had no choice but to jump onto the spear formation. Soon, the spear blades pierced through their soles. After their soles were injured, they immediately fell to the ground. Then the Jade Maiden Peak elders carried them out of the formation, completely losing their right to continue the test. The sweat on Lu Suifeng's forehead flowed continuously into his eyes. It was very uncomfortable. but he did not dare to use his hands to wipe it away. It was not easy for him to maintain his balance. If he made a casual move now, it would be disrupted. Then, there would be a chain reaction and he would fall. However, it was very uncomfortable to ignore the sweat on his forehead. The sweat in his eyes caused his eyes to bleed continuously. His body started to sway slowly. Hoo. Just as Lu Suifeng could not hold on any longer, a cool breeze blew. It was very refreshing under the blazing sun. It blew away the sweat in his eyes. Lu Suifeng opened his eyes. The uncomfortable feeling had completely disappeared. He looked at Xiao Chen beside him with a grateful expression. This cool breeze was naturally the palm wind that Xiao Chen sent out. With the small perfection blue dragon cloud soaring art, he could walk on the river without getting wet. To him, this formation was nothing. Currently, there were only about 10 or 20 people who could do it as easily as Xiao Chen. As time passed, something appeared in the gazes of these people. Finally, someone could no longer hold it in. He shouted and quickly leaped toward Xiao Chen. Attack! Xiao Chen's expression did not change. However, when he saw the clothes these people were wearing, he felt somewhat surprised. Originally, he thought that Zhang Lai would be the first to make a move. He did not expect the inner disciples of Biyun Peak to make a move first. Huang Dang. 4 Biyun Peak disciples drew their sabers and hacked at Xiao Chen. To be able to clear the first stage and jump freely on the spear, these 4 people were not simple. They were not ordinary superior grade martial grandmasters. They were all peak martial grandmasters. They were only a step away from advancing to martial saint. Yi Chun, what should we do? Lu Suifeng was somewhat flustered. Movement techniques were not his forte. It was already difficult for him to stand on the spear. If he wanted to fight, there was no hope for him. Xiao Chen smiled faintly. There is no need to panic. They are just a bunch of jumping clowns. If they were fighting on flat ground, Xiao Chen would have to spend some effort to deal with these 4 people. However, on the spear, as long as he wanted to, he could knock them down within 10 moves. However, he had to take care of Lu Suifeng. He could not leave the spear below him, and could not move freely. Uchi. 4 saber lights hacked at Xiao Chen from 4 different angles. The dazzling saber light was incomparably piercing under the sunlight. Xiao Chen gently pushed off the spear tip and spun around. He drew the lunar shadow saber in his hand with a huangdang sound. An even more intense saber light moved as fast as lightning, chopping down 4 times. Bang! 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 The weapons containing strong essence clashed in the air. Saber lights flew everywhere, giving off 4 metallic sounds. Xiao Chen was fighting 1 against 4, but he was not at a disadvantage. Holding the lunar shadow saber, Xiao Chen landed firmly on the ground. On the other hand, the Biyun Peak disciples were knocked back by the force of the saber. These 4 people were quite impressive. They somersaulted in the air, and after the force dissipated, they landed back on the spear. They pointed their sabers at Xiao Chen. You're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.